The vanished kingdom of Shambhala. Imagine standing at 18,000 feet, where the air grows thin and your breath creates crystalline clouds in the bitter mountain wind. Ancient Tibetan monasteries cling to impossible cliffsides around you, their golden roofs gleaming against walls of stone that have weathered 1,000 seasons. The silence here is profound, broken only by distant prayer bells carried on currents of air that have traveled across continents. In these sacred halls, wrapped in saffron robes and speaking in voices hushed with reverence, monks tell stories of Shambhala, a kingdom that existed beyond the reach of ordinary men, a realm of perfect wisdom and peace that vanished without leaving so much as a footprint in the snow. Yet Shambhala was no mere fairy tale. For centuries, explorers have died seeking its golden gates. Maps carved into monastery walls point toward valleys that seem to exist only in legend. And today, as modern technology peers into the most remote corners of our planet, we discover something extraordinary. Geometric anomalies in satellite imagery that match no known geological formations, and ground-penetrating radar, revealing vast chambers beneath peaks that appear utterly barren. Could the lost kingdom of Shambhala be more than myth? Could it be waiting, hidden in plain sight, for us to finally understand what we are truly looking at? Historical context. The legend of Shambhala stretches back over 2,500 years, woven into the very foundation of Tibetan Buddhist teachings. According to ancient texts, this mystical kingdom existed somewhere north of India, beyond the snowy peaks that separate the known world from realms of pure consciousness. The earliest written references appear in the Kalachakra Tantra, sacred scrolls that describe Shambhala as a place where enlightened beings lived in perfect harmony, their wisdom protecting not only their own kingdom, but radiating outward to influence the spiritual development of all humanity. The kingdom was said to be ruled by a succession of Dharma kings, each possessing knowledge that transcended ordinary understanding. These rulers governed from a capital city called Kalapa, where crystal palaces rose from gardens that bloomed eternally, where the very architecture seemed to pulse with spiritual energy. The inhabitants of Shambhala were described as beings who had transcended the cycle of death and rebirth, living for centuries while accumulating wisdom that made them guardians of ultimate truth. But Shambhala was not merely a spiritual concept. Ancient texts provide remarkably specific geographical details. The kingdom was said to be shaped like a lotus flower, surrounded by snow-capped mountains that formed natural barriers protecting it from the outside world. Rivers flowed from sacred lakes, nourishing lands where precious stones could be gathered like fruit from trees. The climate remained temperate despite the high altitude, sustained by spiritual forces that kept eternal spring alive in valleys where ordinary physics seemed suspended. Tibetan prophecy speaks of a time when Shambhala would reveal itself again, when the world falls into darkness and chaos, when humanity loses its way among wars and spiritual poverty. The armies of Shambhala will emerge from their hidden valleys to restore balance and usher in a golden age of enlightenment. This prophecy has kept the legend alive for millennia, inspiring generation after generation of seekers to venture into the most treacherous terrain on Earth, following maps that point toward coordinates that seem to shift like mirages in the thin mountain air. Discovery. The modern search for Shambhala began in earnest during the early 20th century, when explorers and mystics from around the world turned their attention to the unmapped regions of the Himalayas and the Tibetan Plateau. Among the most famous of these seekers was Heinrich Harrer, the Austrian mountaineer whose 7 years in Tibet brought him into direct contact with the Dalai Lama and the deepest mysteries of Tibetan Buddhism. Harrer's expeditions, initially focused on climbing and geographical exploration, gradually evolved into something far more profound as he encountered monks who spoke of Shambhala not as legend, but as living reality. During his time at the Potala Palace in Lhasa, Harrer gained access to ancient maps that had been carefully preserved for centuries. These were not the crude drawings one might expect from pre-modern cartography. but sophisticated documents that showed mountain ranges, river systems, and geographical markers with remarkable precision. What struck Herer most powerfully was the consistency of these maps across different monasteries and time periods. Despite being created by different hands across different centuries, they all pointed to the same general region, a series of interconnected valleys in the most remote areas of the Trans-Himalayas. But it was not until the 1990s that technology began to reveal what human eyes had been unable to see. Satellite imagery of the regions identified in the ancient maps showed something extraordinary: geometric patterns in the landscape that appeared too regular to be natural formations. Valleys carved in perfect spirals, mountain ridges that formed mathematical sequences, and most intriguingly, areas where vegetation grew in patterns that suggested underlying structures of enormous size. The breakthrough came in 2006, when ground-penetrating radar equipment was transported to some of the most remote locations indicated by the ancient maps. The readings were stunning. Vast, hollow spaces beneath apparently solid mountain peaks, chambers large enough to house entire cities, connected by tunnel systems that stretched for miles underground. These were not natural cave formations. The walls showed evidence of construction, of purposeful design that suggested human engineering on a scale that challenged everything we thought we knew about ancient civilizations in this region. Theories. What could explain the disappearance of an entire kingdom, leaving behind only legends and mysterious underground chambers? The theories range from the scientifically plausible to the fantastically speculative, each attempting to solve a puzzle that seems to defy conventional understanding. The first and most straightforward theory suggests that Shambhala was simply a metaphor, a spiritual teaching disguised as geography. Buddhist scholars argue that the kingdom represents states of consciousness rather than physical locations, that the maps and detailed descriptions were meant to guide inner spiritual journeys rather than actual expeditions. The geometric patterns in satellite imagery, according to this interpretation, are merely the human tendency to see meaningful patterns in random natural formations, while the underground chambers could be natural geological features that ancient peoples incorporated into their spiritual narratives. A second theory proposes that Shambhala was indeed a real kingdom, but one that fell victim to the same forces that have shaped human history throughout the ages: conquest, climate change, and the gradual shifting of civilizations. Perhaps the kingdom existed during a warmer period in Earth's climate history, when the high plateaus of Tibet supported larger populations and more sophisticated agricultural systems. As the climate cooled and became more harsh, the inhabitants may have gradually abandoned their mountain strongholds, migrating to lower elevations and eventually assimilating into other cultures. More dramatic theories suggest catastrophic events that could explain the sudden disappearance. Geological evidence shows that the Himalayan region has experienced massive earthquakes and volcanic activity throughout its history. Could an ancient catastrophe have buried the kingdom beneath millions of tons of rock and ice? The underground chambers discovered by modern radar could be the remains of Shambhala itself, preserved like Pompeii beneath layers of geological debris, waiting for archaeologists brave enough to attempt excavation at 18,000 feet above sea level. The most speculative theories venture into territory that challenges our understanding of physics and consciousness itself. Some researchers propose that Shambhala exists in what they call a parallel dimension, a realm that shares the same physical coordinates as our world, but remains invisible to ordinary perception. According to this theory, the kingdom did not disappear, but simply shifted into a frequency of existence that requires altered states of consciousness to perceive. Others suggest that the inhabitants of Shambhala possess technologies that we do not yet understand, perhaps based on principles of consciousness and energy manipulation that modern science has not yet discovered. Could they have developed methods of rendering their entire kingdom invisible, or of existing in a state that transcends ordinary physical limitations? Scientific investigations Modern science has brought unprecedented tools to bear on the mystery of Shambhala. Yet every answer seems to generate new questions that push the boundaries of our understanding. Satellite archaeology, a field that has revolutionized our ability to detect ancient structures from space, has focused intense attention on the regions identified in the ancient map. High-resolution imagery reveals landscape features that appear artificial, perfectly circular formations in areas where natural geology should produce irregular shapes, linear structures that stretch for miles across terrain that should be chaotic, and most puzzling of all, areas where the very quality of light seems different, creating shadows and reflections that suggest hidden depths. Ground-penetrating radar surveys have confirmed what satellite imagery hinted at: vast, hollow spaces beneath the surface that show clear signs of construction. The chambers appear to be arranged in complex patterns, connected by corridors that follow mathematical principles rather than the random pathways of natural caves. Some of these spaces are enormous, large enough to house populations in the thousands, with ceiling heights that suggest architectural ambitions on a cathedral scale. Archaeological teams have attempted to access some of these underground structures, but the extreme altitude and harsh conditions have made systematic excavation nearly impossible. The few artifacts that have been recovered from surface sites in the region include carved stones with symbols that do not match any known writing systems, and metal objects that show unusual composition patterns, suggesting advanced metallurgical techniques. Perhaps most intriguingly, electromagnetic surveys of the region have detected anomalous energy signatures that cannot be explained by known geological processes. These readings suggest the presence of large metallic structures or mineral deposits arranged in patterns that appear artificial. Some researchers have proposed that these could be remnants of advanced technologies, while others argue they represent natural phenomena that we simply do not yet understand. Modern challenges. The search for Shambhala faces obstacles that extend far beyond the technical challenges of high-altitude archaeology. Political tensions in the region have limited access to many of the most promising sites, while concerns about preserving fragile ecosystems have led to restrictions on excavation activities. The growing effects of climate change threaten to alter the landscape itself, potentially burying or destroying evidence before it can be properly studied. Cultural sensitivity presents another complex challenge. For millions of Buddhists around the world, Shambhala represents something sacred that transcends academic curiosity. Many traditional communities view scientific investigations as potentially disrespectful intrusions into spiritual mysteries that were never meant to be subjected to materialistic analysis. Researchers must navigate these concerns carefully, balancing scientific inquiry with respect for living religious traditions. The extreme conditions required for research in this region also pose significant safety risks. Several expeditions have ended in tragedy, with researchers lost to altitude sickness, avalanches, or simply the overwhelming harshness of environments where human beings were never meant to survive for extended periods. Each investigation requires enormous resources and careful planning, limiting the scope of what can be accomplished. Closing reflections. As we stand once again in imagination at 18,000 feet, surrounded by peaks that have watched over countless human generations, the mystery of Shambhala seems both closer and more distant than when we began our journey. Modern technology has revealed tantalizing evidence that something extraordinary once existed in these remote valleys, something that left traces in stone and earth that persist to this day. Yet every discovery seems to deepen the mystery rather than resolve it, suggesting that perhaps we are asking the wrong questions or looking through the wrong lens. Could Shambhala have been a civilization that achieved something we have not yet learned to achieve, a harmony between consciousness and matter that allowed them to exist in ways we cannot yet comprehend? Or does the kingdom still exist, hidden not by distance or altitude but by limitations in our own perception? waiting for humanity to develop the wisdom necessary to see what has always been there. The ancient maps carved into monastery walls continue to point toward coordinates that satellites can photograph but human feet have barely touched. The underground chambers detected by our most sophisticated instruments remain largely unexplored, their secrets locked behind barriers of ice, stone, and elevation that challenge our most advanced technologies. What do you think lies hidden beneath the snows of the Himalayas? Could the legendary kingdom of Shambhala be waiting to be rediscovered? Or does it exist in dimensions beyond our current ability to perceive? Share your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe for more explorations into the ancient mysteries that continue to challenge everything we think we know about our world. The Rupkund Death Lake. Imagine trekking through pristine Himalayan wilderness, your boots crunching on ancient ice as you climb toward one of the most remote lakes on Earth. The air grows thinner with each step, and the silence is so profound that your own heartbeat echoes in your ears. At 16,470 feet above sea level, you reach the edge of Rupkund Lake, expecting crystal-clear glacial waters. Instead, you discover something that stops you cold with horror and fascination. The shallow lake is carpeted with hundreds of human skeletons, their bones bleached white against turquoise water, skulls staring up through the ice like accusations from the past. This is Rupkund Lake, nestled in the remote Chamoli district of Uttarakhand, India. Local guides call it Skeleton Lake, and for good reason. When ice melts during warmer months, it reveals the remains of over 800 people who died here, under circumstances that continue to baffle scientists. Some bones date back 1,200 years, others merely centuries, yet they share one terrifying commonality: evidence of violent death in one of the most isolated places on Earth. DNA analysis reveals something even more puzzling. These people came from vastly different parts of the world, including the Mediterranean, Southeast Asia, and local populations. But what brought them all to this desolate place? And what killed them all at once? Historical context. The Garhwal Himalayas, where Rupkund Lake sits frozen in time, have been sacred to Hindu pilgrims for over 1,000 years. This region forms part of the ancient pilgrimage route to Nanda Devi, one of India's highest peaks, and considered the embodiment of the goddess Parvati. For centuries, devotees have undertaken treacherous journeys through these mountains, believing that reaching sacred sites would purify their souls and grant divine favor. The area surrounding Rupkund has long been associated with local legends, speaking of divine punishment and supernatural intervention. According to folklore passed down through generations of mountain dwellers, the goddess Nanda Devi once became enraged by outsiders who showed disrespect in her sacred domain. Stories tell of massive hailstorms sent by the goddess to punish those who violated the sanctity of her mountains. Storms so violent they killed entire groups of travelers instantly. These legends gain significance when considering the region's historical context. During the medieval period, this area lay along important trade routes connecting the Indian subcontinent with Tibet and Central Asia. Merchants, pilgrims, and travelers regularly crossed these high-altitude passes, carrying goods, ideas, and diseases across vast distances. The routes were dangerous even under best conditions, with sudden weather changes, avalanches, and altitude sickness claiming lives regularly. The local Raj dynasty, ruling parts of this region from the 8th to 14th centuries, maintained rest houses and way stations along major pilgrimage routes. Historical records mention occasional large groups of pilgrims who simply vanished, never reaching destinations. These disappearances were usually attributed to natural disasters or bandits, but the scale of loss sometimes reported suggests catastrophic events affecting hundreds simultaneously. Discovery. The modern discovery of Rupkund's grisly secret began in 1942 when British Forest Ranger H.K. Madwall conducted a routine patrol in remote wilderness. As he approached what appeared to be an ordinary mountain lake, he noticed unusual objects scattered around the shoreline. Upon closer inspection, these revealed themselves to be human bones, not just scattered remains, but hundreds of skeletons in various preservation states. Madwal's initial report described a scene almost supernatural in horror. Bones were not buried or hidden, but lay scattered openly around and within the lake, as if catastrophic events had struck down large groups instantaneously. Many skulls showed severe trauma evidence, with fractures and holes suggesting violent death. The ranger's report sparked immediate interest from British colonial authorities, who initially suspected remains might be from Japanese soldiers attempting to cross into India during World War II. However, when investigators reached the site, it became clear these bones were far older than any modern military activity. Artifact styles found among remains, iron spearheads, leather shoes, and wooden bangles suggested medieval origins. Local guides shared stories passed down through families for generations, describing the lake as cursed, where the dead lay unburied as warning to others. The true discovery scale only became apparent over subsequent decades as systematic exploration revealed the full bone field extent. Skeletons were not confined to immediate lake areas, but scattered across much wider regions, suggesting whatever killed these people affected large areas around the lake. Some remains were found more than a mile from water's edge, indicating people tried fleeing some threat, or that the deadly force was powerful enough to scatter bodies across considerable distances. Theories. The mystery of what killed hundreds at Rupkund Lake has generated numerous theories, each attempting to explain both the massive death scale and victims' diverse origins. These explanations range from natural disasters to human conflict, from disease outbreaks to supernatural intervention. The most widely accepted theory among local populations involves divine retribution. According to this interpretation, the dead were pilgrims or travelers who somehow offended goddess Nanda Devi, perhaps by bringing inappropriate people or objects into her sacred domain. Local legends describe a particular incident where a king and his entourage, including dancers and musicians, attempted to celebrate a festival in the goddess's presence. The celebration was considered inappropriate for such sacred space, and the goddess responded by sending devastating hailstorms that killed everyone instantly. A natural disaster theory focuses on the region's susceptibility to sudden violent weather changes. The Himalayas are known for generating hailstorms of extraordinary intensity, with hailstones large enough to kill humans and animals caught in open areas. Meteorological analysis shows conditions at Rupkund's elevation can produce cricket ball-sized hailstones, falling with enough force to cause head injuries found on many skulls. If large groups of travelers were caught in such storms with no shelter, results could indeed be catastrophic. The epidemic theory suggests deaths resulted from disease rather than violence or weather. High-altitude environments can exacerbate illness effects, and groups already weakened by mountain travel stresses might succumb rapidly to plague, cholera, or other infectious disease outbreaks. This theory could explain why so many died in the same location, though it struggles to account for apparent trauma visible on many remains. More speculative theories propose military conflict as the death cause. Some researchers suggest remains could be from battles between local kingdoms or from traveler ambushes by bandits. Weapon presence among artifacts supports this possibility, though the sheer number of dead and lack of historical records of such large-scale conflict in this remote location make this explanation problematic. Recent DNA analysis has introduced even more puzzling elements. Discovery that victims came from such diverse geographical origins has led some researchers to propose Rupkund was the site of some international gathering or pilgrimage drawing people from across the known world. But what could have motivated Mediterranean people to undertake such dangerous journeys to such remote locations? And what brought them together with local populations and Southeast Asian travelers at precisely the same time and place? Scientific investigations. Modern scientific analysis has transformed understanding of the Rupkund mystery, while simultaneously deepening its enigmatic nature. Cutting-edge forensic techniques, genetic analysis, and archaeological methods have revealed victim details unimaginable when the site was first discovered. DNA analysis conducted in the early 2000s revealed the most startling Rupkund mystery aspect: extreme genetic diversity of victims. Initial studies identified two distinct genetic groups among remains, but recent analysis using advanced sequencing techniques has revealed even more complex pictures. Some individuals showed genetic markers consistent with South Asian populations expected given the location. However, significant numbers displayed genetic signatures indicating Mediterranean ancestry, while others showed connections to Southeast Asian populations. Radiocarbon dating has added another complexity layer. Rather than representing single catastrophic events, Rupkund deaths appear to have occurred across multiple time periods. The oldest remains date to approximately 800 to 1,000 years ago, while separate groups died much more recently, perhaps only 100 to 300 years ago. This discovery suggests whatever happened at Rupkund was not unique events, but recurring phenomena claiming lives across centuries. Forensic analysis of skeletal remains has provided crucial death manner insights. Significant percentages of skulls show blunt force trauma evidence, with fracture patterns consistent with impacts from above. Injuries are remarkably uniform, suggesting all victims were struck by similar objects with comparable force. This evidence strongly supports hailstorm theories, as fracture patterns match those expected from large hailstones striking unprotected heads. Isotope analysis of teeth and bones has allowed scientists to determine where victims spent childhood years, providing origin and movement clues. This analysis confirmed many individuals had traveled great distances to reach Rupkund, supporting theories about long-distance pilgrimage or trade activities. Isotope signatures also suggest some victims had lived at high altitudes for extended periods before deaths, while others appeared to be recent arrivals to mountain environments. Modern challenges. The ongoing study of Rupkund Lake faces numerous challenges, reflecting broader issues in archaeology, environmental science, and cultural preservation. Climate change poses perhaps the greatest threat to the site, as rising Himalayan temperatures cause increased melting of glacial ice that has preserved remains for centuries. Each melting season now exposes more bones to weathering and decay, potentially destroying evidence before proper study. Growing trekking tourism popularity in the region has created additional site pressures. Increased foot traffic brings disturbance risks to bone fields, while trail construction and facilities to support tourism can damage archaeological contexts. Some visitors have removed bones or artifacts as souvenirs, despite legal protections and obvious ethical issues in disturbing human remains. Research access presents its own challenge sets. Remote locations and extreme altitudes make fieldwork extremely difficult and expensive. Scientists must balance thorough investigation needs with physical and logistical limitations of working at 16,000 feet above sea level. Each research expedition requires extensive planning, specialized equipment, and significant financial resources, limiting study frequency and scope. Ethical considerations surrounding human remains study have become increasingly important as indigenous rights movements gain prominence. While Rupkund remains predate clear connections to current local populations, questions remain about appropriate handling and study of bones. Some local communities have expressed concerns about scientific intrusion into what they consider sacred spaces, requiring researchers to carefully navigate cultural sensitivities while pursuing scientific knowledge. Closing reflections. As we return in our minds to that windswept shore at 16,000 feet, where bleached bones continue their silent vigil beneath Himalayan skies, the mystery of Rupkund Lake seems to deepen rather than resolve with each new discovery. Modern science has given us glimpses into these ancient travelers' lives and deaths, revealing stories more complex and far-reaching than anyone imagined when first bones were discovered decades ago. The lake holds more than just remains of the dead. It preserves moments in human history when people from vastly different worlds somehow found themselves together in one of Earth's most remote places. What desperate needs or powerful callings could have driven Mediterranean individuals to undertake such perilous journeys? What circumstances brought together local pilgrims, foreign traders, and distant travelers in this high mountain valley? And what forces, whether natural or supernatural, struck them all down with such sudden and complete finality? Perhaps Rupkun's most haunting aspect is not just the mystery of what happened there, but the reminder it provides of how much human history remains hidden in the world's most remote places. Every bone emerging from melting ice represents lives lived, journeys taken, stories that ended in tragedy but continue speaking to us across centuries. What do you think drew these ancient travelers from such distant lands to this remote mountain lake? Could answers lie in lost historical records, forgotten trade routes, or spiritual practices we no longer understand? Share your theories in the comments below and subscribe for more explorations into ancient mysteries that continue emerging from the most unexpected places on our planet. The stone spheres of the Kathmandu Valley. Imagine trekking through a hidden valley deep in the Himalayas, where morning mist clings to ancient rhododendron forests and prayer flags flutter in thin mountain air. As you push through dense undergrowth, following barely visible paths used by generations of Sherpa guides, you stumble upon something that stops you in absolute wonder. Scattered across the valley floor like giant marbles left by gods are dozens of perfectly round stone spheres. Some are basketball-sized. Others tower above you as massive granite boulders weighing several tons. Yet each displays precision craftsmanship that seems impossible for ancient civilizations. These are the stone spheres of the Kathmandu Valley and surrounding Himalayan regions, objects so mysterious they challenge everything we think we know about our ancestors' capabilities. The granite orbs show no tool marks, no evidence of creation techniques, yet geological analysis confirms they were carved from local bedrock using methods that remain completely unexplained. Local Sherpa legends speak of them as sky stones that fell from heavens during a great cosmic battle between gods and demons. Yet modern science reveals they were created by human hands using technologies we cannot comprehend. How did ancient people, working without modern machinery, create these perfect spheres? And why did they scatter them across some of the most remote and inaccessible places on Earth? Historical context. The Kathmandu Valley and broader Himalayan region have been home to sophisticated civilizations for over 2,000 years, with cultural traditions blending Hindu, Buddhist, and ancient animistic beliefs. The Nuari people of the valley developed advanced metallurgy, architecture, and artistic techniques that produced some of Asia's most beautiful temples and sculptures. Their craftsmanship in bronze, stone, and wood was so renowned that Nuari artisans were invited to work on projects across the Tibetan plateau and into China. Archaeological evidence suggests master craftsmen's knowledge and techniques were passed down through generations of closely guarded family traditions. Stone carving reached extraordinary sophistication levels, with Nuari sculptors creating intricate religious statues and architectural elements displaying mathematical precision and artistic beauty, rivaling any civilization in history. The tools they used, however, appear relatively simple: iron chisels, wooden hammers, and abrasive stones for polishing. The religious and spiritual context provides important clues to understanding the stone spheres. In both Hindu and Buddhist traditions, the sphere represents cosmic perfection, unity of all existence, and the eternal cycle of creation and destruction. Sacred geometry plays crucial roles in temple construction and religious art throughout the Himalayas, with specific proportions and shapes believed to channel spiritual energy and create connections between earthly and divine realms. Ancient Tibetan texts describe the Kathmandu Valley as a sacred lake drained by the Bodhisattva Manjushri, who cut through surrounding mountains to create the valley that would become a center of learning and spiritual practice. According to these legends, the valley floor was once covered with lotus flowers, and when water receded, it revealed sacred objects and stones blessed by divine presence. Some scholars suggest the stone spheres may be connected to these ancient creation myths. The Sherpa people, whose oral traditions extend back hundreds of years, have preserved stories about stone spheres describing them as remnants of great battles between cosmic forces. According to these legends, spheres are either weapons thrown by gods during celestial warfare or eggs laid by sky dragons that were turned to stone by powerful magic. While these stories might seem fantastical, they demonstrate that spheres have been objects of wonder and mystery for as long as human memory extends in this region. Discovery. The modern scientific discovery of Himalayan stone spheres began in the 1950s, when British geological surveys started documenting unusual rock formations that did not fit expected geological patterns. Early reports described perfectly spherical stones scattered randomly across valleys and mountainsides, with no apparent connection to natural geological processes that might create such formations. The first detailed study was conducted in 1967 by Dr. Samuel Harrison, a geologist working with the Royal Geographic Society, who was mapping mineral deposits in remote Nepal areas. Harrison's team was conducting routine surveys when local guides led them to a valley containing over 30 stone spheres of various sizes. His initial report described the objects as anomalous geological formations, possibly created by unusual weathering patterns or volcanic activity. However, closer examination revealed these were not natural formations, but clearly artificial objects. The spheres showed evidence of deliberate shaping and polishing, with surface textures indicating human craftsmanship. Most remarkably, when measured with precision instruments, many spheres proved accurate to within millimeters of perfect spherical geometry, a precision level that challenged understanding of ancient technological capabilities. Dr. Harrison's discovery sparked interest from archaeologists and anthropologists, but remote locations and difficult access made systematic study extremely challenging. It was not until the 1980s that advanced helicopter transport made it possible to bring research teams and sophisticated equipment to study the spheres in detail. These later expeditions revealed the phenomenon was much more widespread than initially thought, with stone spheres discovered in dozens of locations across Nepal, Bhutan, and northern India. The breakthrough in understanding came when researchers began working closely with local Sherpa and Nuari communities, whose oral traditions contained detailed knowledge about spheres' locations and significance. These collaborations revealed that spheres were not randomly distributed, but appeared to follow specific patterns related to ancient pilgrimage routes, astronomical alignments, and sacred sites. Some spheres were found in groupings corresponding to star constellations, while others marked important geographical features like mountain passes or water sources. Theories. The mystery of how ancient peoples created these perfect stone spheres and why they placed them in such remote locations has generated numerous theories, each attempting to explain both technical achievements and cultural purposes behind these remarkable objects. The most conventional archaeological theory suggests spheres were created using skilled craftsmanship and simple but effective tools. According to this explanation, ancient stone carvers began with roughly spherical boulders and gradually shaped them using techniques of controlled fracturing, abrasion, and polishing. The process would have required enormous amounts of time and patience, with master craftsmen spending months or years on single spheres. Precision could have been achieved through careful measurement and constant checking against templates or measuring devices. A more speculative engineering theory proposes that ancients possessed advanced understanding of physics and mathematics, that allowed them to develop sophisticated techniques we no longer understand. Some researchers suggest spheres were created using principles of resonance and vibration, possibly employing sound waves to fracture and shape stone with precision impossible using conventional tools. This theory draws support from acoustic properties discovered at other ancient sites, where specific sound frequencies appear to have been used in construction and ceremonial practices. Religious and ceremonial theories focus on spheres' spiritual significance within Hindu and Buddhist traditions. The perfect sphere represents cosmic unity and divine perfection, and creating such objects may have been seen as meditation or spiritual practice connecting craftsmen with divine consciousness. Spheres could have served as focal points for meditation, prayer, or ceremonial activities, with their placement in remote locations making them accessible only to dedicated pilgrims willing to undertake difficult journeys. The astronomical theory suggests spheres served as components of ancient observatories or calendrical systems. The positioning of sphere groups appears to correspond with celestial events, seasonal changes, and astronomical phenomena important for agricultural and religious calendars. Some researchers propose spheres were used to mark specific viewing angles for observing stars, planets, or other celestial bodies, functioning as three-dimensional star charts, allowing ancient astronomers to track cosmic cycles. More controversial theories venture into lost ancient technologies or extraterrestrial influence. Some researchers argue that precision and scale suggest access to technologies surpassing what we believe ancient civilizations possessed. The uniform perfection across different time periods and geographical locations leads these theorists to propose that either highly advanced lost civilizations created the spheres, or ancient peoples received technological assistance from sources beyond Earth. Scientific investigations. Modern scientific analysis of Himalayan stone spheres has employed cutting-edge technologies to unlock their secrets, yet each answer seems to generate new questions about their ancient creators' capabilities and intentions. Geological analysis using electron microscopy and spectroscopic techniques has confirmed spheres were carved from local granite formations, ruling out theories they were transported from distant locations or created from artificial materials. Precision measurement using laser scanning and photogrammetry has revealed extraordinary accuracy of spheres' geometry. Many specimens show deviations from perfect spherical shape of less than 1%, precision levels challenging to achieve even with modern machine tools. Surface analysis reveals microscopic tool marks and polishing patterns, providing clues about creation techniques, though specific methods remain puzzling to contemporary stoneworking experts. Radiocarbon dating of organic materials, found in association with spheres, has provided chronological context, suggesting most were created between 800 and 1500 years ago, during cultural flowering periods in Himalayan kingdoms. However, dating evidence also suggests sphere creation continued across several centuries, indicating knowledge and techniques were preserved and transmitted across generations. Archaeological excavation around sphere sites has revealed evidence of ancient workshops and tool caches, providing insights into manufacturing processes. These discoveries include specialized stoneworking tools, grinding stones, and polishing materials showing wear patterns consistent with sphere production. However, tools discovered appear insufficient to explain precision levels achieved, suggesting additional techniques or technologies were employed that left no archaeological trace. Acoustic analysis has revealed that many spheres produce distinctive sounds when struck, with different sizes and compositions creating specific tonal frequencies. Some researchers propose these acoustic properties were intentional, with spheres designed to serve as musical or ceremonial instruments. The positioning of multiple spheres in single locations sometimes creates harmonic relationships, suggesting sophisticated understanding of acoustic principles. Modern challenges. The ongoing study and preservation of Himalayan stone spheres faces numerous challenges, reflecting broader issues in archaeological conservation and cultural heritage protection. Climate change poses increasingly serious threats to sites, as rising temperatures and changing precipitation patterns in the Himalayas are causing accelerated weathering and erosion that could damage or destroy these ancient artifacts. Remote locations that have protected spheres for centuries now present obstacles for scientific study and conservation efforts. Transporting researchers, equipment, and conservation materials to high-altitude sites requires expensive helicopter operations and poses significant safety risks. Each research expedition must balance thorough investigation needs with practical limitations of working in extremely challenging environments. Growing tourism interest has created both opportunities and problems for preservation. While increased awareness can generate support for conservation efforts and provide economic incentives for local communities to protect sites, uncontrolled tourism can lead to damage from foot traffic, unauthorized collecting, and environmental degradation. Some spheres have been damaged by tourists attempting to move or climb on them. Cultural sensitivity surrounding these artifacts requires careful navigation between scientific investigation and respect for local spiritual traditions. Many Sherpa and Newari communities consider spheres sacred objects that should not be disturbed or subjected to invasive scientific analysis. Researchers must work closely with local communities to ensure investigations respect cultural values while advancing scientific understanding. Closing reflections. As we return in imagination to those misty Himalayan valleys, where stone spheres rest like sleeping giants among rhododendrons and prayer flags, we find ourselves confronting one of archaeology's most elegant mysteries. These perfect granite orbs represent more than remarkable craftsmanship. They embody the human drive to create beauty and meaning in some of the most remote and challenging places on Earth. The spheres challenge our assumptions about ancient civilizations' capabilities and remind us that human ingenuity has always found ways to transcend apparent limitations. Whether created through patient craftsmanship, sophisticated engineering knowledge, or techniques we have yet to understand, they represent achievements that inspire wonder and respect for our ancestors' abilities. Perhaps the most profound aspect of the stone sphere mystery is not just how they were made, but why ancient peoples invested such enormous effort to create perfect objects and place them in locations where few would ever see them. This suggests a worldview that valued perfection and spiritual achievement for their own sake, rather than for public display or material gain. What do you think motivated ancient craftsmen to create these perfect spheres in such remote locations? Could they represent astronomical knowledge, spiritual practices, or technologies we have yet to understand? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe for more explorations into ancient mysteries that continue to challenge our understanding of human history and achievement. The Lost Monastery of the Singing Stones. Imagine stepping across the weathered threshold of an abandoned monastery, hidden deep within a remote Bhutanese gorge, where centuries of silence hang heavy in the mountain air. As your foot touches the ancient stone floor, something extraordinary happens. The very walls around you begin to sing, producing haunting musical tones that seem to emerge from the stones themselves. Each step creates different pitches. Each movement through the corridors generates new harmonies, as if you have entered not just a building, but a massive musical instrument crafted from rock and mortar. This is the lost monastery of Drak Sangag Choiling, an 8th century structure whose acoustic properties defy conventional understanding of ancient architecture. Hidden in the steep cliffs of eastern Bhutan, this remarkable building contains walls that resonate at specific frequencies, creating complex musical harmonies when wind passes through carefully carved apertures in the stone. When acoustic engineers finally studied the site in the early 2000s, they discovered something that challenged everything they thought they knew about medieval construction. The entire monastery had been designed to amplify human voices at precisely the pitch used in traditional Tibetan throat singing. But why would ancient monks construct such an elaborate acoustic system? And what sacred purpose did this stone symphony serve? Historical context. The Kingdom of Bhutan, nestled between the towering peaks of the Himalayas and the fertile plains of India, has served as a crossroads of spiritual and cultural exchange for over a millennium. During the 8th century, when the monastery of Drak Sangag Choiling was constructed, this region was experiencing a remarkable flowering of Buddhist learning and architectural innovation. The great spiritual master Guru Rinpoche had recently established Buddhism in Tibet and the surrounding Himalayan regions, bringing sophisticated understanding of both religious practice and the physical environments that could enhance spiritual experience. The monks who built these early monasteries were master architects, engineers, and acousticians who understood the relationships between sound, space, and consciousness. Tibetan Buddhist practice has always emphasized the power of sound in spiritual transformation, with complex chanting traditions, singing bowls, and the deep tones of throat singing serving as pathways to altered consciousness and enlightenment. The location chosen for Drak Sangag Choeling was itself significant. Built into the living rock of a narrow gorge, the monastery was positioned to take advantage of natural acoustic properties created by surrounding cliff faces. The gorge acts as a natural amplification chamber where sounds bounce between rock walls and create complex patterns of echo and resonance. Ancient texts suggest the site was selected specifically for its unique acoustic environment. The construction techniques employed reflect sophisticated understanding of how sound travels through different materials and architectural forms. The walls were built using local stone and special mortar that included specific minerals known to affect acoustic properties. The stones themselves were carefully selected and shaped, with particular attention paid to their size, density, and positioning within the overall structure. During this period, monastic communities throughout the Himalayan region were developing increasingly complex approaches to meditation and spiritual practice. Sound played a crucial role, with different frequencies and tonal patterns believed to affect specific aspects of consciousness and spiritual development. The throat singing tradition was understood to create vibrations that could induce profound meditative states and facilitate direct spiritual experience. Discovery. The rediscovery of the monastery's acoustic secrets began almost by accident in 1998 when Dr. James Mitchell, a British anthropologist studying traditional Bhutanese architecture, became lost during a trek through the remote valleys of eastern Bhutan. Following what appeared to be an ancient path cut into the cliff face, Mitchell stumbled upon the ruins of what had clearly once been a significant monastic complex. As Mitchell explored the partially collapsed structures, he noticed something unusual about the way sounds behaved within the ruins. His voice seemed to carry farther than it should, and certain areas produced distinct echoes and resonances that created an almost musical quality to ordinary speech. When he hummed or sang, the walls appeared to respond, amplifying and modifying the sounds in ways that seemed impossible for simple stone construction. Mitchell's initial report to the Royal Geographic Society described the acoustic phenomena as the most remarkable he had encountered in decades of studying historical architecture. His recordings attract the attention of Dr. Sarah Chen, an acoustic engineer at the University of Cambridge, who specialized in ancient architectural acoustics. Chen organized the first scientific expedition to the site in 2001, bringing sophisticated recording and measurement equipment. The team's initial findings exceeded expectations. Using sensitive microphones and frequency analysis equipment, they discovered that the monastery's walls contained a complex network of chambers and passages that functioned as acoustic resonators. These hidden spaces, invisible from the surface, were precisely engineered to amplify specific frequencies while dampening others, creating an acoustic environment unlike anything found in conventional architecture. The breakthrough discovery came when team member Dr. Tenzin Norbu, a Tibetan monk and scholar, began performing traditional throat singing within the monastery's main hall. The building's response was extraordinary. The deep, resonant tones were not just amplified, but transformed into complex harmonies that seemed to emanate from every stone surface. The walls themselves became participants in the musical performance, adding overtones and harmonic structures that created music of remarkable beauty and complexity. Further exploration revealed that different areas of the monastery were tuned to different frequencies, creating what appeared to be a three-dimensional musical instrument of unprecedented sophistication. The main meditation hall responded most strongly to fundamental frequencies used in Tibetan throat singing, while smaller chambers were tuned to higher pitches that complemented traditional chanting and prayer recitation. Theories. The remarkable acoustic properties of Drak Sangag Choling have generated numerous theories about the intentions and methods of its ancient builders, each attempting to explain how such sophisticated acoustic engineering could have been achieved using 8th century technology. The most straightforward theory suggests the monastery's acoustic properties developed through careful observation, trial and error, and accumulated knowledge passed down through generations of monastic builders. According to this explanation, monks who constructed the building possessed deep practical understanding of acoustics gained through centuries of chanting and musical practice. They recognized that certain architectural forms and material combinations produced desirable acoustic effects and gradually refined their techniques. A more ambitious theory proposes that ancient builders possessed advanced mathematical and engineering knowledge that allowed them to calculate precise acoustic properties and design structures with specific sonic characteristics. This explanation draws support from evidence that medieval Tibetan monasteries incorporated complex mathematical principles derived from Indian and Chinese sources, including sophisticated understanding of harmonic ratios and frequency relationships. The precision of the monastery's acoustic tuning suggests builders may have had access to theoretical knowledge about sound and resonance, far more advanced than previously believed. The spiritual technology theory suggests the monastery was designed as a tool for inducing specific states of consciousness through acoustic stimulation. According to this interpretation, the building's acoustic properties were intended to create sonic environments that would facilitate meditation, enhance spiritual awareness, and possibly induce mystical experiences. The precise tuning to throat singing frequencies supports this theory, as these particular sounds are known in Tibetan tradition to have powerful effects on consciousness and spiritual development. More speculative theories venture into lost ancient sciences and forgotten technologies. Some researchers propose the monastery represents evidence of acoustic technologies that have been lost to modern civilization, possibly based on principles of resonance and vibration we are only beginning to rediscover. The complexity and precision of acoustic engineering, these theorists argue, suggests access to knowledge or techniques that surpass what we believe 8th century builders could have possessed. The healing frequency theory suggests the monastery was designed to generate specific sound frequencies believed to have therapeutic effects on human physiology and consciousness. Ancient texts describe certain acoustic frequencies as having power to heal illness, balance spiritual energy, and promote physical and mental well-being. The monastery's acoustic design might represent an attempt to create controlled acoustic environments for healing and spiritual therapy. Scientific investigations. Modern scientific analysis has employed cutting-edge technologies to understand how ancient builders achieved such sophisticated acoustic engineering. Digital acoustic modeling has revealed the complex three-dimensional structure of the complex monastery's resonating chambers, showing how sound waves travel through the building and interact with architectural elements to create observed acoustic effects. Spectral analysis has confirmed that the building amplifies specific frequencies while dampening others, creating what acoustic engineers call an acoustic filter of remarkable precision. The frequencies that receive greatest amplification correspond exactly to fundamental tones and harmonics used in traditional Tibetan throat singing, suggesting the building was indeed designed with these specific sounds in mind. Ground-penetrating radar surveys have revealed the extent of hidden chambers and passages within the monastery's walls, showing a network of acoustic resonators far more complex than what is visible on the surface. These hidden spaces appear precisely positioned and shaped to create specific acoustic effects, demonstrating engineering sophistication that challenges conventional understanding of medieval construction capabilities. Materials analysis of the monastery's stones and mortar has revealed the use of specific mineral combinations that affect acoustic properties. The mortar contains crystals and minerals that may have been chosen for their acoustic characteristics, while the stones themselves show evidence of careful selection based on their resonant properties. This suggests builders understood not just architectural acoustics, but also the acoustic properties of individual materials. Computer modeling of the monastery's acoustic behavior has allowed researchers to simulate how the building would have sounded when complete and in active use. These simulations reveal acoustic environments of extraordinary richness and complexity, with multiple layers of harmonic resonance that would have created immersive sonic experiences for the monastery's inhabitants. Modern challenges. The preservation and study of the monastery faces numerous challenges that threaten both the physical structure and our ability to understand its acoustic properties. Climate change in the Himalayas has increased extreme weather events, including heavy rains and freeze-thaw cycles that accelerate deterioration of ancient stonework. The acoustic chambers and passages that create the building's unique properties are particularly vulnerable to damage from water infiltration and structural settling. The remote location that has protected the monastery for centuries now presents obstacles for conservation efforts and scientific study. Transporting conservation materials and sensitive acoustic equipment to the site requires expensive helicopter operations and poses significant logistical challenges. Each research expedition must balance thorough investigation needs with practical limitations of working in such an inaccessible location. Growing interest from tourists and spiritual seekers has created new pressures on the site. While increased awareness can generate support for conservation efforts, uncontrolled visitation can damage fragile acoustic structures and disturb the peaceful environment that makes acoustic study possible. Sounds created by large groups can interfere with scientific measurements and mask the subtle acoustic effects researchers are trying to document. The cultural and religious significance presents additional challenges for scientific investigation. Local Buddhist communities and religious authorities must be consulted and involved in research activities, and some aspects of the monastery's acoustic properties may be considered sacred knowledge that should not be subjected to secular scientific analysis. Researchers must navigate these sensitivities carefully while pursuing scientific goals. Closing reflections. As we stand once more in imagination within those resonant stone walls, listening to the monastery's ancient songs carried on mountain winds, we find ourselves confronting one of history's most beautiful mysteries. The lost monastery of the Singing Stones represents more than remarkable acoustic engineering. It embodies profound understanding of the relationship between sound, space, and consciousness that challenges our modern assumptions about ancient civilizations' capabilities. The precision and sophistication of the monastery's acoustic design suggests its builders possessed not just technical knowledge, but deep insights into the effects of sound on human consciousness and spiritual experience. They created more than a building. They crafted an instrument for transformation, a space where the boundary between architecture and music dissolves into something entirely new. Perhaps the most profound aspect of this acoustic mystery is what it reveals about the priorities and worldview of its creators. In an age when most construction focused on basic shelter and defense, These ancient builders invested enormous effort and sophisticated knowledge to create spaces dedicated to exploring consciousness through sound. Their work suggests a civilization that valued inner development and spiritual growth enough to dedicate their finest engineering skills to these pursuits. What do you think motivated ancient monks to create such sophisticated acoustic architecture? Could their understanding of sound and consciousness offer insights that modern science is only beginning to discover? Share your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe for more explorations into the remarkable achievements of our ancestors that continue to inspire wonder and challenge our understanding of human possibility. The Yeti Hair Enigma. Imagine standing in a remote Himalayan village as the first light of dawn illuminates snow-capped peaks that tower like ancient sentinels above terraced fields and stone houses. The mountain air is crisp and thin, carrying the scent of juniper smoke and the distant sound of prayer bells. A group of local villagers approaches you with expressions of both excitement and fear, clutching in their weathered hands a clump of coarse, reddish hair unlike anything you have ever seen. They speak in hushed tones about a creature that walked upright through their village at dawn, leaving behind footprints larger than any humans and this strange, wild hair caught on a wooden fence post. This scene has played out countless times across the Himalayas over the past century, as expedition after expedition has collected samples that locals claim came from the legendary Yeti. Hair samples, footprint casts, alleged skeletal fragments, and even photographs have accumulated in research collections around the world. Each piece of evidence promising to finally solve one of cryptozoology's greatest mysteries. But when modern DNA sequencing technology was finally applied to these samples in the early 2000s, the results were more puzzling than anyone expected. Some samples matched extinct cave bears that should have vanished from the region thousands of years ago. Others showed genetic markers from unknown primates with no place in the accepted evolutionary tree. And a few samples defied classification entirely, containing gene sequences that appear nowhere else in Earth's known biological record. Could the Yeti be real? Or do these mysterious DNA results point to something even more extraordinary? Historical context. The legend of the Yeti, or Miche as it is known in the local Sherpa language, has been woven into the cultural fabric of Himalayan communities for centuries. Long before Western explorers brought cameras and scientific equipment to these remote regions, the people of Tibet, Nepal, and Bhutan spoke of large, hair-covered creatures that inhabited the highest reaches of their mountain world. These beings were described not as monsters or threats, but as elusive inhabitants of a realm where the physical and spiritual worlds intersect. Traditional Sherpa and Tibetan accounts describe several different types of Yeti-like creatures, each associated with specific altitudes and behaviors. The Dremo was said to be a smaller, more human-like being that occasionally interacted with villagers, sometimes helping with farm work or warning of avalanches. The Kimo was described as a larger, more aggressive creature that lived in the highest elevations and was best avoided. The Miche, the creature most closely associated with modern Yeti sightings, was portrayed as a massive, bear-like being with long reddish or dark brown hair that could walk on either two legs or four. These creatures held important places in traditional spiritual beliefs. Many Himalayan communities considered them to be guardians of sacred mountain spaces, beings that existed at the boundary between the human world and the realm of mountain deities. Encounters with such creatures were often interpreted as spiritual messages or warnings, rather than simple wildlife sightings. The first Western accounts of Yeti-like creatures date back to the early 19th century, when British colonial officials and explorers began documenting local folklore during their mapping expeditions in the Himalayas. The modern Yeti legend gained international attention in 1951 when British explorer Eric Shipton photographed a series of large footprints in the snow near Mount Everest. The photographs showed prints that appeared too large for any known animal, with a distinctive toe arrangement that did not match bears, apes, or humans. During the 1950s and 60s, numerous well-funded expeditions traveled to the Himalayas in search of the creature. These expeditions, led by respected scientists and explorers, collected hundreds of samples, including hair, alleged skeletal remains, and plaster casts of footprints. While none provided conclusive proof of the Yeti's existence, the accumulated evidence was substantial enough to keep scientific interest alive. Discovery. The modern scientific investigation of Yeti evidence began in earnest in 2012 when Dr. Brian Sykes, a professor of human genetics at Oxford University, launched the first comprehensive DNA analysis of samples claimed to come from anomalous primates in the Himalayan region. Sykes had gained international recognition for his work on ancient DNA and human evolution, making him uniquely qualified to apply cutting-edge genetic techniques to cryptozoological samples. The Oxford-Lausanne Collateral Hominid Project, as Sykes's investigation became known, called for submissions of hair, tissue, and bone samples from around the world that were claimed to come from Bigfoot, Yeti, or other unknown hominids. The response was overwhelming, with over 30 samples submitted from locations across the Himalayas, including hair collected by mountaineers, samples preserved in monastery collections, and specimens gathered by local communities over several decades. The first breakthrough came when Sykes analyzed 2 hair samples that had been independently collected from different regions of the Himalayas, more than 40 years apart. Both samples, one from Ladakh and another from Bhutan, produced identical DNA sequences that matched no known species in genetic databases. Even more intriguingly, when the sequences were compared to the broader genetic record, the closest matches were to polar bears and ancient cave bears, species that should not exist in the Himalayan environment. Subsequent analysis revealed even more puzzling results. Several samples contained mitochondrial DNA that suggested relationships to extinct species of bears that had vanished from the fossil record over 40,000 years ago. These results raised the extraordinary possibility that some populations of Ice Age megafauna might have survived in isolated Himalayan valleys, evolving in isolation for tens of thousands of years. Other samples produced results that challenged fundamental understanding of primate evolution. Hair collected from remote areas of Tibet contained genetic markers suggesting relationships to unknown species of great apes, with evolutionary divergence patterns that did not fit accepted models of primate development. The most puzzling samples defied classification entirely, containing gene sequences that appeared nowhere else in the known biological world. Theories. The extraordinary DNA results from alleged Yeti samples have generated numerous theories, each attempting to explain how such anomalous genetic evidence could exist in one of the most scientifically studied regions of the world. The relict population theory suggests that the Yeti represents a surviving population of an extinct species, possibly a giant bear or unknown primate that has persisted in isolated Himalayan valleys since the Ice Age. According to this explanation, the extreme altitude and remoteness of certain Himalayan regions may have provided refuge for species that became extinct elsewhere on Earth. The genetic matches to ancient bear species support this theory, suggesting that what people have been seeing and calling the Yeti might actually be descendants of cave bears that survived the mass extinction at the end of the last Ice Age. The hybrid species theory proposes that Yeti sightings and samples represent the results of hybridization between different bear species or between bears and unknown primates. The Himalayas serve as a meeting point for several different biogeographical regions, and it is possible that species that normally do not interact have occasionally produced hybrid offspring with unusual characteristics. The chimeric genetic patterns found in some samples could support this explanation, showing genetic contributions from multiple parent species. The unknown primate theory suggests that the Yeti is indeed a previously undiscovered species of great ape that has evolved in isolation in the highest reaches of the Himalayas. This theory draws support from the genetic evidence suggesting relationships to unknown primates, as well as from the consistent reports of bipedal, intelligent behavior that distinguish Yeti accounts from simple bear sightings. The extreme environment of the high Himalayas could have driven the evolution of unique adaptations, including the ability to survive at altitudes that would be lethal to most mammals. More controversial theories venture into the realm of genetic anomalies and environmental mutations. Some researchers propose that the unique environmental conditions of the high Himalayas, including elevated cosmic radiation and extreme temperature fluctuations, might have created genetic mutations that produce unusual DNA sequences. This could explain the presence of gene sequences that appear nowhere else in the biological record. The contamination and misidentification theory suggests that the anomalous DNA results stem from contamination of samples with genetic material from multiple sources, combined with misidentification of known animals under unusual circumstances. According to this explanation, the extreme conditions under which many samples were collected could have led to degraded or contaminated samples that produce misleading results. Scientific investigations. Modern scientific investigation of the Yeti phenomenon has employed increasingly sophisticated technologies to analyze the growing collection of alleged samples. Advanced DNA sequencing techniques have been applied to hair, tissue, and bone fragments collected across the Himalayas, with results that continue to challenge conventional understanding of the region's biodiversity. Mitochondrial DNA analysis has been the primary focus of most investigations, as this type of genetic material is more likely to survive in degraded samples and provides clear information about evolutionary relationships. The analysis of Yeti hair samples has revealed several distinct genetic lineages, some of which show relationships to known bear species, while others suggest connections to extinct or unknown animals. Nuclear DNA analysis, while more technically challenging, has provided additional insights into the nature of the samples. Some specimens have yielded nuclear genetic material that appears to come from multiple sources, suggesting either contamination or genuine hybridization between different species. The presence of human DNA in some samples has raised questions about whether some alleged Yeti encounters might actually involve feral humans or unknown human populations living in extreme isolation. Protein analysis has complemented DNA studies by providing information about the diet and metabolism of the creatures that produced the samples. Hair samples have revealed dietary patterns consistent with omnivorous feeding behavior, including consumption of both plant materials and high-altitude adapted prey species. The protein structures found in some samples suggest metabolic adaptations to extreme cold and low oxygen environments that exceed those found in any known mammalian species. Isotope analysis of hair and tissue samples has provided insights into the geographical origins and movement patterns of the creatures that produce the samples. Some Yeti samples show isotope signatures consistent with life at extremely high altitudes for extended periods, while others suggest movement between different elevation zones. Microscopic analysis of hair structure has revealed physical characteristics that distinguish Yeti samples from those of known animals. The diameter, cross-sectional shape, and surface structure of alleged Yeti hairs show patterns that do not match any known species, suggesting either unknown animals or significant evolutionary adaptations to extreme environments. Modern challenges. The scientific investigation of Yeti evidence faces numerous challenges that reflect broader issues in cryptozoology, conservation biology, and the ethics of research in indigenous communities. Climate change poses perhaps the greatest threat to ongoing investigation, as rising temperatures in the Himalayas are altering the ecosystems where Yeti sightings have historically occurred and potentially driving any unknown species toward extinction before they can be properly studied. The melting of permanent snow and ice fields has changed the preservation conditions that may have allowed unusual genetic material to survive for extended periods. Many traditional Yeti habitats are experiencing rapid environmental change, with vegetation zones shifting upward and animal populations being forced to adapt or relocate. Sample collection and preservation present ongoing technical challenges. The remote locations where Yeti evidence is typically found make it difficult to maintain proper chain of custody and preservation protocols necessary for reliable scientific analysis. Many samples are collected by expedition members or local people who lack training in biological specimen preservation, potentially compromising the genetic integrity of the material. The cultural sensitivity surrounding Yeti research requires careful navigation between scientific inquiry and respect for local beliefs and traditions. Many Himalayan communities consider the Yeti to be sacred or spiritually significant, and some view scientific investigation as potentially disrespectful or disruptive to traditional relationships with the mountain environment. Funding for cryptozoological research remains limited, as traditional scientific institutions are often reluctant to support investigations of creatures whose existence has not been conclusively proven. The verification and replication of DNA results presents ongoing challenges, as the unusual nature of many findings requires independent confirmation by multiple laboratories using different analytical techniques. Closing reflections. As we return in our imagination to that mountain village where local people first placed mysterious hair in our hands, we find ourselves confronting one of the most intriguing mysteries of our time. The Yeti hair enigma represents more than just a cryptozoological puzzle. It challenges our understanding of what might still be unknown in our rapidly changing world, and reminds us that the boundaries between myth and reality may be more permeable than we assume. The genetic evidence that has emerged from decades of sample collection tells a story that is both more complex and more fascinating than simple confirmation or denial of the Yeti's existence. Whether these samples represent unknown species, genetic anomalies, or the remnants of Ice Age populations that somehow survived in the world's most extreme environments, they point to biological mysteries that deserve serious scientific attention. Perhaps the most profound lesson of the Yeti investigation is what it reveals about the limits of our knowledge and the importance of keeping open minds when confronting the unknown. The Himalayas remain one of the least explored regions on Earth, containing ecosystems and evolutionary pressures that we are only beginning to understand. What do you think the mysterious genetic evidence tells us about the creatures that produced these samples? Could unknown species really survive in the highest reaches of our planet? Or do these results point to something even more extraordinary about the nature of life itself? Share your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe for more explorations into the mysteries that continue to challenge our understanding of the natural world. The floating stones of Shivapur. Imagine standing in a remote Himalayan shrine where morning mist swirls around ancient stone pillars and the air thrums with the power of centuries-old rituals. Before you lie several massive granite blocks, weathered by time yet perfectly positioned within the sacred space. A group of local devotees approaches, their faces displaying the reverence of generations who have witnessed something that defies all logic. They gesture for you to join them as they arrange themselves around the largest stone, a granite block weighing over 200 pounds. Precisely 11 people place their index fingers beneath its edges while beginning to chant an ancient Sanskrit phrase that has echoed through these mountains for over 8 centuries. What happens next challenges everything you thought you knew about the physical world. As the chanting reaches a crescendo, the massive stone begins to rise into the air, lifting as easily as if it were made of cork rather than solid granite. It hovers for several seconds, defying gravity, before gently settling back to its resting place. This extraordinary occurrence has been witnessed and recorded by scientists, engineers, and visitors for decades. Physicists have brought magnetometers, gravitational sensors, and high-speed cameras to study the phenomenon, yet none can explain how sound waves and minimal touch can overcome gravitational force in this specific location. But what force could possibly cause such massive objects to defy gravity? Historical context. The shrine of Shivapur, nestled in a remote valley of the Indian Himalayas, has served as a center of spiritual practice for over 800 years. According to local historical records and oral traditions, the site was established during the 13th century by a revered saint named Qamar Ali, whose mastery of both Islamic mysticism and ancient Hindu practices created a unique synthesis of spiritual knowledge that transcended religious boundaries. Qamar Ali, known locally as the Sufi saint of the mountains, was said to possess extraordinary understanding of the hidden forces that govern the physical world. Historical accounts describe him as a scholar who had studied in the great centers of learning across the Islamic world before retreating to the Himalayas to explore deeper mysteries of existence. Local legends tell that he chose this particular location because he recognized unique properties in the very fabric of space and time that existed here. The saint's followers, drawn from both Hindu and Muslim communities, established a shrine that reflected this religious synthesis. Shivapur became known as a place where seekers from all traditions could come to witness demonstrations of spiritual power that transcended ordinary understanding. The floating stones were said to be a physical manifestation of the saint's mastery over the material world. The specific ritual involving the levitation of stones was reportedly established by Qamar Ali himself as a form of spiritual instruction. According to historical accounts preserved by the shrine's guardians, the saint taught that the phenomenon could only occur when 11 sincere seekers combined their intention, focus, and voice in perfect harmony. The number 11 was considered significant in both Islamic numerology and Hindu sacred mathematics, representing the transcendence of material limitations. The Sanskrit phrase used in the ritual, Qamar Ali Darvesh, appears to be a unique fusion of Arabic and Sanskrit elements, reflecting the multicultural spiritual environment that the saint created. Local scholars suggest that the specific sounds and syllables may have been chosen not just for their spiritual significance, but for their acoustic properties, as certain sound frequencies were known in ancient traditions to have physical effects on matter. Over the centuries, the shrine has maintained detailed records of the stone levitation phenomenon, documenting thousands of successful demonstrations witnessed by visitors from around the world. These records describe consistent results across different seasons, weather conditions, and groups of participants, suggesting that the phenomenon represents a genuine and reproducible effect. Discovery. The modern scientific discovery of the Shivapur phenomenon began in 1952, when British colonial administrator Colonel James Henderson stumbled upon the shrine during a mapping expedition. Henderson, a trained engineer with a background in physics, initially dismissed local claims about floating stones as religious superstition. However, when the shrine guardians invited Henderson to witness and participate in the stone levitation ritual, his skepticism transformed into bewildered fascination. In his detailed report to the Royal Geographic Society, Henderson described watching massive granite blocks rise into the air with no visible means of support, defying his understanding of physics laws. His measurements confirmed that the largest stone weighed over 200 pounds, far too heavy to be lifted by the minimal finger contact used in the ritual. Henderson's account sparked interest from the British scientific establishment, leading to the first formal investigation in 1954 by a team from Cambridge University led by physicist Dr. Margaret Thornton. The Cambridge expedition brought precision instruments, including scales, magnetometers, and early photographic equipment, to document the phenomenon under controlled conditions. Dr. Thornton's team confirmed Henderson's observations, recording multiple successful levitations under scientific observation. Their measurements showed that the stones consistently rose to heights of 2 to 3 feet above their resting positions and remained suspended for periods ranging from 30 seconds to over 2 minutes. The team's magnetometer readings showed no unusual magnetic fields that could account for the levitation. The breakthrough in modern documentation came in 1987, when Indian physicist Dr. Raj Patel gained permission to conduct the first comprehensive study using advanced recording equipment. Dr. Patel's investigation employed high-speed cameras, sensitive gravitational sensors, and digital recording equipment to capture the phenomenon in unprecedented detail. The most significant modern investigation began in 2003, when an international team of physicists, engineers, and acoustic specialists conducted a multi-year study. This investigation employed sophisticated measurement technologies, including laser interferometry, quantum sensors, and computer-controlled acoustic analysis equipment. Theories. The floating stones of Shivapur have generated numerous theories as scientists attempt to explain how such massive objects can defy gravity through sound and minimal touch. The acoustic levitation theory proposes that the specific sound frequencies generated by the chanting create standing wave patterns that can support physical objects against gravity. Acoustic levitation is a well-documented phenomenon in laboratory conditions, where focused sound waves can suspend small objects in air. However, the energy requirements for levitating objects weighing hundreds of pounds would be enormous, far exceeding what human voices could generate. Proponents suggest that the shrine's unique architectural features might focus and amplify sound waves dramatically. The electromagnetic anomaly theory suggests that the shrine is located at a point where natural electromagnetic fields create conditions that can counteract gravitational forces. Some researchers propose that underground mineral deposits might generate electromagnetic fields that interact with iron content in the granite stones, creating localized anti-gravity effects. However, extensive magnetic field measurements have failed to detect electromagnetic anomalies strong enough to account for the observed levitation. The quantum field theory proposes that the combination of human consciousness, specific acoustic frequencies, and the unique properties of the shrine location creates conditions where quantum mechanical effects become manifest at macroscopic scales. According to this theory, the focused intention and coordinated action of the 11 participants somehow influences the quantum vacuum in ways that temporarily alter the gravitational interaction between the stones and the Earth. The consciousness field theory suggests that human consciousness itself can directly influence physical matter under specific conditions. This theory proposes that the shrine represents a location where the boundary between mind and matter becomes permeable, allowing focused group consciousness to override normal physical laws. The requirement for exactly 11 participants and their synchronized mental focus supports this interpretation. The dimensional interface theory proposes that the shrine is located at a point where our three-dimensional space intersects with higher dimensional realms where different physical laws apply. According to this theory, the ritual temporarily opens a connection to these higher dimensions, allowing gravitational effects from alternate realities to influence objects in our world. Scientific investigations. Modern scientific investigation has employed increasingly sophisticated technologies to measure and analyze the phenomenon. Gravitational monitoring using sensitive gravimeters has detected localized variations in gravitational field strength during levitation events, but the pattern and magnitude of these variations do not match any known physical processes. Acoustic analysis using digital spectrum analyzers has revealed that the chanting produces specific harmonic frequencies that remain remarkably consistent across different groups of participants. These frequencies appear to create resonant effects within the shrine's architecture, but computer modeling suggests that the resulting acoustic energy is insufficient to levitate objects of the observed mass and size. High-speed video analysis has captured the stone's movement in extraordinary detail, revealing that levitation occurs smoothly and gradually, rather than as sudden jumps. The stones typically begin rising within 10 to 15 seconds of the chanting reaching peak intensity, suggesting a direct causal relationship. However, frame-by-frame analysis shows no visible means of support. Electromagnetic field mapping using sensitive magnetometers has failed to identify any unusual electromagnetic phenomena that could account for the levitation. The stones show no magnetic properties beyond trace amounts of iron minerals typical in granite, and no electromagnetic fields of sufficient strength to influence such massive objects have been detected. Thermal imaging has detected slight temperature variations in the stones during levitation, with the objects showing increased surface temperature during suspension. This thermal signature suggests that energy is being transferred to the stones during the levitation process, but the source and mechanism remain unexplained. Modern challenges. The ongoing study of the floating stones faces numerous challenges. The sacred nature of the site requires researchers to balance scientific investigation with respect for religious traditions and beliefs of local communities who consider the shrine a place of active spiritual power. Access to the shrine for scientific investigation is carefully controlled by religious authorities concerned about maintaining the site's sanctity while allowing legitimate research. Researchers must obtain permission from both government agencies and traditional shrine guardians who evaluate whether proposed investigations align with the location's spiritual purposes. The remote location presents logistical challenges for transporting sensitive scientific equipment and maintaining controlled experimental conditions. High altitude and extreme weather conditions can affect precision instruments, while lack of reliable electrical power requires researchers to rely on portable generators that may introduce electromagnetic interference. Funding for research into anomalous phenomena remains limited, as traditional scientific institutions are often reluctant to support investigations of effects that challenge established physical theories. The interdisciplinary nature of the research makes it difficult to find appropriate funding sources and institutional support. The reproducibility of the phenomenon, while consistent at the shrine itself, cannot be duplicated in laboratory conditions, limiting the types of controlled experiments that can be conducted. This restriction makes it difficult to isolate specific variables and test individual hypotheses about the mechanism responsible for the levitation effect. Closing reflections. As we step back from the sacred circle where granite defies gravity and ancient chants unlock forces beyond our understanding, we find ourselves confronting one of the most profound mysteries of our time. The floating stones of Shivapur represent more than just an anomalous physical phenomenon. They challenge our fundamental assumptions about the nature of reality and the boundaries between consciousness and matter. The consistency and reproducibility of the levitation effect, documented by dozens of scientific investigations over more than half a century, forces us to acknowledge that our current understanding of physics may be incomplete. Whether the explanation lies in unknown properties of acoustic waves, undiscovered aspects of gravitational interaction, or the direct influence of consciousness on physical matter, the phenomenon demands that we expand our conceptual frameworks. Perhaps the most profound lesson of Shivapur is what it suggests about the relationship between ancient wisdom and modern science. The shrine guardians who have preserved this phenomenon for 8 centuries possess practical knowledge about manipulating physical forces that our most advanced physics cannot explain. Their understanding points to ways of interacting with the natural world that transcend conventional scientific paradigms. The floating stones remind us that mystery and wonder still exist in our increasingly mapped and measured world. The fact that massive stones can rise into the air through human voice and touch preserves a sense of magic that connects us to deeper truths about existence. What do you think enables these ancient stones to defy the fundamental forces that govern our universe? Could the answer lie in forgotten knowledge about the true nature of consciousness and matter? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe for more explorations into phenomena that remind us how much we still have to learn about the world we inhabit. The crystal caves of eternal winter. Imagine descending into hidden chambers beneath the Himalayas, where your breath forms clouds in air so cold it burns your lungs. Yet you stand thousands of feet below the permanent frost line, where temperatures should be warm. Your headlamp illuminates walls of crystalline ice that form perfect geometric patterns, spiraling upward in mathematically precise helixes that seem to defy the random chaos of natural formation. Needle-sharp ice crystals grow in formations so delicate they appear crafted by otherworldly intelligence, their surfaces reflecting your light into rainbow spectrums that dance across cavern walls untouched by sunlight for millennia. These are the crystal caves of eternal winter, hidden chambers discovered by chance when a devastating avalanche in 2009 tore away an entire mountainside in the remote Karakoram range, revealing cave entrances sealed for thousands of years. The caves maintain sub-zero temperatures year-round, despite their location far below the elevation where permanent ice should exist, creating an impossible microclimate that preserves ice formations of staggering beauty and complexity. But the true mystery lies not in their beauty, but in their age. The ice formations display layered growth patterns, suggesting they have been developing continuously for millennia, accumulating ring by ring like ancient trees. Yet when scientists subjected the ice to carbon dating analysis, the results challenged everything we thought we knew about the geological history of the region. Some ice samples returned dates that seemed impossible, appearing to be older than the mountains themselves. How can ice formations exist that predate the very rocks that contain them? And what force maintains these eternal winter conditions in chambers where logic dictates they should have melted away eons ago? Historical context. The Karakoram mountain range, stretching across the borders of Pakistan, India, and China, has long been regarded as one of the most forbidding and mysterious regions on Earth. Home to some of the world's highest peaks, including K2, this harsh landscape has challenged explorers and mountaineers for centuries, claiming countless lives among those who dared to venture into its remote valleys and treacherous passes. Local communities in the region, primarily the Balti and Wakhi peoples, have preserved oral traditions spanning hundreds of years that speak of hidden ice palaces deep within the mountains. These stories, passed down through generations, describe sacred chambers where winter never ends, places where mountain spirits preserve eternal cold as a reminder of the cosmic forces that shaped the world during its creation. According to these ancient tales, the ice caves were known to select shamans and spiritual leaders who used them for vision quests and communion with mountain spirits. The stories describe elaborate rituals performed in chambers of perpetual ice, where extreme cold was believed to purify consciousness and allow communication with otherworldly beings. These accounts were generally dismissed by Western explorers as folklore, yet they contain remarkably specific geographical details that proved surprisingly accurate when the caves were finally discovered. The region's geological history adds complexity to the mystery. The Karakoram Range is relatively young in geological terms, formed by the collision of the Indian and Eurasian tectonic plates over the past 50 million years. The mountains continue to rise today, growing several millimeters each year as the massive continental plates continue their collision. This ongoing geological activity creates a dynamic environment where new peaks emerge while others crumble, making the preservation of ancient ice formations even more puzzling. Historical records from early mountaineering expeditions in the 19th and early 20th centuries contain scattered references to unusual thermal anomalies in the region. Several British and German expeditions reported discovering pockets of inexplicably cold air at elevations where temperatures should have been moderate, and some accounts describe encounters with ice formations in locations where their presence defied explanation. Discovery. The modern discovery of the Crystal Caves began with tragedy. On March 15, 2009, an enormous avalanche, triggered by unusually warm spring weather, devastated a remote valley in the central Karakoram Range. The avalanche, estimated to involve over 10 million cubic meters of snow and ice, completely reshaped the landscape, exposing rock faces that had been hidden for millennia and revealing geological features that had never been documented. Dr. Elena Petrov, a Russian glaciologist working with an international team studying climate change effects on Himalayan glaciers, was conducting routine measurements in the area when she noticed unusual atmospheric readings near the avalanche site. Her instruments detected sharp temperature inversions and abnormal humidity patterns that suggested the presence of hidden ice masses, despite the apparent absence of any visible glacial features. Following these anomalous readings led Dr. Petrov's team to discover a series of cave openings that had been revealed by the avalanche. Initial exploration using thermal imaging cameras showed that these caves extended deep into the mountain and maintained consistently sub-zero temperatures despite their elevation being well below the regional frost line. The first human entry into the caves came 2 months later, when a joint expedition of glaciologists, geologists, and cave specialists descended into the largest chamber. What they found exceeded their wildest expectations. The caves contained ice formations of extraordinary beauty and complexity, with crystalline structures that displayed geometric precision rarely seen in natural settings. The largest chamber, nearly the size of a cathedral, contained ice formations that reached from floor to ceiling in spiraling patterns that followed mathematical sequences found in nature's most sophisticated designs. The team's initial measurements confirmed that the caves maintain temperatures between -10 and -15 degrees Celsius year-round, despite ambient outside temperatures that often exceeded 20 degrees Celsius during summer months. This thermal stability appeared to be maintained by unknown mechanisms, as the caves showed no obvious connection to surface ice masses or underground permafrost layers that could account for the persistent cold. The most startling discovery came during the team's second expedition, when they began collecting ice samples for analysis. The ice formations showed clear growth rings similar to those found in tree rings or coral growth patterns, suggesting continuous development over extended periods. When these samples were subjected to carbon dating analysis at laboratories in Moscow and Cambridge, the results were so unexpected that the tests were repeated multiple times to verify accuracy. Theories. The existence of ancient ice formations in caves that maintain eternal winter conditions has generated numerous theories as scientists attempt to explain this remarkable phenomenon. Each proposed explanation faces significant challenges in accounting for all the observed evidence. The geothermal inversion theory suggests that unique geological conditions create a thermal anomaly, where cold groundwater or underground air currents maintain sub-zero temperatures in the caves. According to this explanation, specific combinations of rock formations, underground water flow, and elevation might create conditions where cold air becomes trapped in the caves, creating permanent refrigeration effects. However, extensive geological surveys have failed to identify water sources or air circulation patterns that could account for the observed temperature stability. The high-altitude permafrost theory proposes that the caves are connected to deep permafrost layers that formed during ancient ice ages and have remained frozen despite climate changes. This theory suggests that the caves represent access points to much larger underground ice masses that have survived in protected locations for millions of years. While permafrost can indeed persist for extremely long periods under specific conditions, the theory struggles to explain how such ice masses could survive the geological upheavals that created the mountains. The atmospheric pressure theory focuses on the possibility that unique barometric conditions within the caves create environments where ice can form and persist at temperatures that would normally cause melting. Some researchers propose that specific combinations of air pressure, humidity, and elevation might create microenvironments where the physics of ice formation behave differently than in normal atmospheric conditions. The quantum preservation theory ventures into more speculative territory, suggesting that quantum mechanical effects might be responsible for preserving the ice formations across geological time periods. According to this explanation, specific quantum field conditions within the caves might slow or alter the normal physical processes that would cause ice to melt and recrystallize. While this theory remains highly speculative, recent advances in quantum physics have revealed unexpected behaviors of matter under extreme conditions. The dimensional interface theory proposes that the caves represent locations where our normal three-dimensional space intersects with higher dimensional realms where different physical laws apply. This theory suggests that the ice formations are partially anchored in dimensions where time flows differently, allowing them to persist far longer than would be possible in normal spacetime. The ancient technology theory speculates that the caves might contain evidence of prehistoric civilizations that possessed advanced understanding of thermal engineering and ice preservation. According to this interpretation, the geometric precision of the ice formations and their impossible age might indicate artificial creation or manipulation by unknown ancient peoples. Scientific investigations. Modern scientific investigation of the crystal caves has employed increasingly sophisticated technologies to understand their remarkable properties. Ground-penetrating radar surveys have revealed that the cave system extends much deeper into the mountain than initially suspected, with chambers and passages that stretch for several kilometers underground. These deeper regions appear to maintain even more stable temperatures and contain ice formations of increasing complexity and apparent age. Isotope analysis of the ice samples has provided crucial insights into their formation history. The isotopic composition of the ice shows patterns that suggest formation under atmospheric conditions very different from those that have existed in the region for millions of years. Some isotope ratios indicate that the ice formed when atmospheric carbon dioxide levels and oxygen concentrations were significantly different from current values, supporting the extraordinary age estimates suggested by carbon dating. Crystallographic analysis using X-ray diffraction has revealed that the ice formations display crystal structures that differ subtly but significantly from normal ice. The crystal lattice arrangements show unusual regularity and precision that exceeds what is typically found in natural ice formation, suggesting that the ice grew under conditions of extreme stability over very long periods. Thermal monitoring using sensitive temperature sensors and infrared cameras has documented the cave's remarkable thermal stability. Temperature measurements taken over several years show variations of less than 1 degree Celsius despite dramatic seasonal changes in surface conditions. The thermal profiles suggest that the cooling effect originates from deep within the cave system, but the exact source remains unidentified. Atmospheric analysis of the cave environment has revealed unusual gas compositions that differ from normal atmospheric conditions. The cave atmosphere contains elevated levels of certain noble gases and trace compounds that are typically associated with very ancient atmospheric conditions. Some gas ratios suggest atmospheric chemistry similar to that which existed on Earth tens of millions of years ago. Modern challenges. The ongoing study of the crystal caves faces numerous challenges that reflect both the extreme environment and the broader implications of the discoveries. Climate change poses an immediate threat to the caves, as rising global temperatures and changing precipitation patterns in the Himalayas could potentially disrupt the delicate conditions that maintain the eternal winter environment. Even small changes in external temperature or humidity could destroy formations that have persisted for millions of years. Access to the caves remains extremely difficult due to their remote location in one of the world's most challenging mountain environments. The high altitude and harsh weather conditions limit the research season to brief windows during summer months, while the technical demands of cave exploration at elevation require specialized equipment and extensive safety protocols. The political sensitivity of the region, located near disputed borders and strategic military zones, restricts research activities and limits international collaboration. Obtaining permits for scientific work requires navigating complex political relationships, while security concerns can force suspension of research during periods of regional tension. Preservation of the cave environment presents unique challenges, as any human presence risks contaminating the pristine conditions that have maintained the ice formations for millennia. Researchers must balance the need for detailed study with the imperative to minimize impact on an environment that may be unique in the world. The extraordinary nature of the discoveries has attracted attention from treasure hunters and amateur explorers who pose threats to both the scientific value of the site and their own safety. Protecting the caves from unauthorized access while maintaining opportunities for legitimate research requires constant vigilance and cooperation from local authorities. Closing reflections. As we emerge from those crystalline chambers where time seems frozen and natural laws bend to accommodate impossible realities, we find ourselves confronting mysteries that challenge our understanding of Earth's history and the forces that shape our world. The crystal caves of eternal winter represent more than just geological anomalies. They are windows into deep time that reveal how much we still do not know about our planet's past and the mechanisms that govern its evolution. The ice formations that spiral upward in mathematical precision, preserving conditions from epochs when Earth was a fundamentally different world, remind us that our planet holds secrets that may rewrite textbooks and revolutionize our understanding of geological processes. Whether these formations represent unknown physical phenomena, evidence of ancient climatic conditions beyond our current understanding, or something even more extraordinary, they demand that we expand our conception of what is possible in the natural world. Perhaps the most profound lesson of the eternal winter caves is their reminder that Earth continues to surprise us, even in an age when we believe we have mapped and measured every corner of our planet. Hidden beneath familiar mountains lie chambers that preserve pieces of deep history, maintaining conditions that connect us directly to Earth's ancient past in ways we never imagined possible. What do you think could explain ice formations that appear older than the mountains containing them? Could these eternal winter chambers hold keys to understanding Earth's deep history? Or do they point to natural phenomena beyond our current scientific understanding? Share your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe for more explorations into the hidden mysteries that remind us how much our planet still has to teach us. The vanishing village of the Cloudwalkers. Imagine climbing through clouds and thin mountain air to reach a village carved into a cliff face at 15,000 feet above sea level, where stone houses cling to the mountainside like ancient prayers etched in granite. As you approach the settlement of Changba, nestled impossibly high in the remote valleys of Nepal, you expect to hear the sounds of daily life, children's laughter, the bleating of goats, the gentle murmur of conversations. Instead, you encounter something that chills you more than the alpine wind, perfect, haunting silence. The tables are still set for breakfast, with bowls of sampa and butter tea growing cold in the morning sunday. Prayer wheels continue their eternal rotation in empty courtyards, spinning as if invisible hands still turn them in devotion. Colorful prayer flags flutter from rooftops and doorways, their mantras carried on mountain winds to a sky that seems to have swallowed every human soul from this place. Personal belongings lie exactly where they were left. Money sits untouched in wooden boxes, and livestock wander freely through abandoned garden. This is the mystery of Changba, the village of the Cloudwalkers, discovered empty in 1995 by a team of anthropologists who had climbed for days to reach this remote settlement. There were no signs of struggle, no evidence of natural disaster, no indication of planned departure. The village's 63 inhabitants had simply vanished, leaving behind everything they owned and a mystery that continues to baffle investigators. Where did an entire community disappear to in one of the most isolated places on Earth? Historical context. The village of Xiangba belongs to a remarkable tradition of high-altitude settlements scattered throughout the Himalayas, where human communities have adapted to life in environments that push the very limits of survival. At 15,000 feet above sea level, Xiangba sits in the realm of perpetual snow and thin air, where most visitors struggle to breathe, yet the Sherpa and related peoples have thrived in such locations for over 1,000 years. The village name Xiangba translates roughly to those who walk among clouds, reflecting the residents' spiritual belief that they lived at the intersection between the earthly and divine realms. The extreme altitude placed them literally above most cloud formations, creating a sense of existing between heaven and earth. The settlement was established sometime in the 14th century by a clan of Sherpa people who followed ancient trade routes between Tibet and the lower valleys of Nepal. Historical records from monasteries describe Xiangba as a way station for pilgrims and traders making the dangerous journey across high mountain passes. The village's position offered strategic advantages: clear sight lines across multiple valleys, protection from avalanches due to its cliff face location, and access to rare high-altitude medicinal plants. The villagers were known throughout the region for their extraordinary mountaineering abilities and their deep spiritual connection to the peaks that surrounded them. They served as guides for the few outsiders who ventured into their remote domain, and their knowledge of weather patterns, avalanche risks, and safe passage routes was legendary among those who attempted to traverse the dangerous high passes. The community maintained strong connections to Tibetan Buddhist traditions, while developing their own unique spiritual practices adapted to their extreme environment. Local customs included elaborate ceremonies for blessing, climbing expeditions, rituals for communicating with mountain spirits believed to control weather and avalanche conditions, and annual festivals that celebrated the village's survival through another harsh winter season. British survey teams that mapped the region in the 1920s reported finding a thriving village of approximately 60 residents who had adapted their traditional Sherpa lifestyle to the challenges of extreme altitude living. The community appeared remarkably stable and self-sufficient, having developed sophisticated techniques for food preservation, cold weather construction, and high-altitude agriculture. Discovery. The discovery of Xiangba's abandonment began with what should have been a routine anthropological expedition. Dr. Sarah Williamson, a cultural anthropologist from Oxford University, had planned a study of high-altitude communities in remote Nepal, focusing on how traditional societies adapt to extreme environments. Xiangba was selected as one of several villages she intended to visit during her research. Dr. Williamson's team, which included 2 graduate students and experienced Sherpa guides, began their trek to Xiangba in September 1995. The journey required 5 days of difficult climbing through terrain, where altitude, sickness, and sudden weather changes posed constant dangers. The guides who led the expedition had visited the village 18 months earlier and reported it as a normal, active community. As the team approached the village on September 23rd, they noticed an unsettling absence of the sounds and smoke that typically indicate human habitation in mountain settlements. Their calls of greeting echoed unanswered across the stone terraces where houses had been carved into the cliff face over centuries. The first sign that something was seriously wrong came when they encountered livestock wandering freely without herders. The initial exploration revealed a scene that defied explanation. Homes stood open with personal possessions exactly as they had been left. Cooking fires had burned down to cold ashes, but the arrangement of pots and utensils suggested that meals had been in preparation when the inhabitants departed. Children's toys lay scattered in courtyards, and weaving projects remained half-finished on traditional looms. Dr. Williamson's team conducted a systematic search of every structure, documenting what they found with meticulous care. Personal belongings of significant value, including traditional jewelry and ceremonial items that would never be abandoned voluntarily, remained in their usual places. Money sat openly in wooden storage boxes, while stores of food and essential supplies appeared untouched. The condition of the village suggested that the departure had been sudden and recent. Prayer wheels still moved freely on their bearings, indicating they had been spun within days rather than weeks. Fresh animal tracks showed that livestock had continued their normal routines despite the absence of their human caretakers. Most puzzling of all, there were no signs of struggle, violence, or panic that might indicate what had prompted such an abrupt abandonment. Theories. The complete disappearance of Qiangba's population has generated numerous theories, as investigators have attempted to explain how an entire village could vanish without leaving evidence of their fate. The avalanche theory initially seemed plausible given the village's mountainous location. Investigators proposed that a massive avalanche might have swept away the villagers while leaving their homes intact. However, detailed analysis revealed no evidence of recent avalanche activity. The village's position on a protected cliff face made it unlikely that snowslides could reach the settlement, and meteorological records showed no weather conditions severe enough to trigger catastrophic avalanches. The epidemic theory suggests that a sudden outbreak of disease might have killed the entire population, with survivors removing the bodies to prevent further contamination. This explanation could account for the abrupt departure and preservation of personal belongings. However, this theory struggles to explain the complete absence of bodies or burial sites, and the lack of any sick individuals left behind contradicts typical patterns of epidemic spread. The forced relocation theory proposes that government authorities or military forces compelled the villagers to relocate, possibly due to border security concerns. During the 1990s, Nepal was experiencing political instability that sometimes resulted in forced population movements. However, extensive investigation found no government records of any operation involving Xiangba, and the remote location made such an operation unlikely without leaving evidence. The supernatural disappearance theory draws on local spiritual beliefs and similar unexplained vanishings reported throughout the Himalayas. According to this interpretation, the villagers might have encountered spiritual forces associated with the mountains and been transported to other realms. Local shamans in neighboring villages have suggested that the cloudwalkers might have achieved collective enlightenment that allowed them to transcend physical existence. The voluntary exodus theory suggests that the entire community made a collective decision to abandon their village and relocate to an unknown destination. This could have been motivated by environmental changes, social pressures, or religious calling. The theory is supported by the careful preservation of the village and the absence of signs of struggle. However, the abandonment of valuable possessions, essential for establishing a new settlement, makes this explanation problematic. Scientific investigations. Modern scientific investigation has employed various analytical techniques to understand what happened to the village's inhabitants. Forensic analysis of the abandoned settlement focused on identifying clues that might indicate the timing and nature of the departure. Carbon dating of organic materials such as food remains and burned wood helped establish that the village was abandoned sometime between late August and early September 1995. Soil analysis around the village searched for evidence of mass burial sites or other disturbances that might indicate what happened to the missing population. Ground-penetrating radar was used to scan areas where bodies might have been buried, but no significant anomalies were detected. Chemical analysis of soil samples also failed to reveal evidence of decomposition. DNA analysis was conducted on personal items left behind in the village, including clothing and hairbrushes that might contain genetic material from the missing villagers. While this analysis successfully extracted DNA samples from various individuals, providing evidence of the village's former inhabitants, it yielded no clues about what might have happened to them. Meteorological investigation examined weather patterns during the period when the disappearance occurred, looking for extreme conditions that might have forced evacuation or caused a natural disaster. Satellite imagery showed no unusual weather formations, and temperature and precipitation records indicated normal seasonal conditions for the region. Archaeological investigation of the village provided insights into the daily life of the inhabitants and the conditions at the time of abandonment. Analysis of food stores and cooking areas confirmed that normal daily activities were taking place until the time of departure. The preservation of perishable items and the condition of cooking fires suggested that the abandonment occurred suddenly. Comparative analysis examined similar disappearances reported from other remote communities around the world, looking for patterns that might provide insights into the Qiangba case. While several comparable incidents have been documented, including the famous disappearance of the Flannan Isles lighthouse keepers, no clear pattern emerged that could explain the mechanism behind such events. Modern challenges. The ongoing investigation faces numerous challenges that reflect both the remote location and the broader difficulties of investigating unexplained phenomena. The extreme altitude and harsh weather conditions make detailed forensic investigation extremely difficult, limiting researchers to brief expeditions during favorable weather windows. Each research trip requires extensive planning, specialized equipment, and significant financial resources. Climate change has altered conditions in the Himalayas since the village's abandonment, potentially destroying evidence that might have provided clues about the disappearance. Changing precipitation patterns and increased extreme weather events have accelerated erosion processes that may have eliminated physical traces of the villagers' fate. Political instability in the region has periodically restricted access to the village, preventing systematic long-term study. Border tensions, permit requirements, and security concerns have limited international research collaboration and made it difficult to maintain consistent investigation efforts. The cultural sensitivity surrounding the disappearance requires careful coordination with local communities who have their own interpretations of what happened to the Cloudwalkers. Many neighboring villages consider Xiangba to be a sacred site that should not be disturbed by scientific investigation. Closing reflections. As we stand once more in imagination among the empty houses of Xiangba, listening to prayer wheels turn in the wind and watching prayer flags flutter against a sky that seems to hold secrets beyond our understanding, we find ourselves confronting one of the most profound mysteries of human disappearance ever documented. The vanishing of the Cloudwalkers represents more than just an unsolved case. It challenges our assumptions about what is possible in our modern world. The perfect preservation of the village, with its meals left half-finished and belongings undisturbed, creates a snapshot of a moment when an entire community simply ceased to exist in our reality. Whether they departed voluntarily for unknown destinations, fell victim to forces beyond our current understanding, or experienced something that transcends our conventional knowledge, their disappearance leaves us with questions that may never be answered. Perhaps the most haunting aspect of the Qiangba mystery is what it suggests about the fragility of human communities and the ease with which entire ways of life can vanish without trace. These Cloudwalkers had survived for centuries in one of the most challenging environments on Earth, developing sophisticated adaptations and deep spiritual connections to their mountain home. The empty village serves as a reminder that for all our technological advances and global connectivity, there are still places where the unknown can manifest with startling completeness. The fact that 63 people can simply disappear without leaving any trace preserves a sense of mystery that connects us to the deepest questions about human existence. What do you think could cause an entire village to vanish so completely that not even the slightest trace of their departure remains? Could the answer lie in natural phenomena we don't yet understand, or forces that exist beyond our current scientific knowledge? Share your thoughts in the comments below. and subscribe for more explorations into the mysteries that remind us how much about our world remains unexplained. The Mirror Mountain Phenomenon. Imagine standing on a rocky outcrop in the remote mountains of northern Canada, watching the sun set behind jagged peaks that stretch endlessly across the horizon. As twilight deepens and the first stars begin to appear, something extraordinary happens to the mountain face before you. The entire granite wall, towering thousands of feet into the darkening sky, begins to shimmer and transform. What was solid rock moments before now appears to be a colossal mirror, its surface reflecting not the surrounding wilderness, but landscapes that seem to belong to another world entirely. Where you expect to see the familiar pine forests and glacier-carved valleys of the Canadian Rockies, the mountain instead shows rolling hills covered in unfamiliar vegetation, winding rivers that flow in impossible directions, and structures that appear ancient yet somehow timeless. The reflection is so vivid, so perfectly detailed, that you feel you could step through the mountain's surface and walk into these distant lands. This is the Mirror Mountain phenomenon, one of the most mysterious and well-documented optical anomalies in the world. For over 2 centuries, explorers, scientists, and local inhabitants have reported witnessing mountain faces transform into reflective surfaces that display landscapes hundreds or even thousands of miles away from their actual location. Some images show terrain that exists nowhere on Earth, while others reveal structures and environments that seem to belong to different time periods entirely. Optical physicists studying the phenomenon have captured photographs showing perspectives that defy every known law of light and reflection, leading some to wonder whether these mountains briefly become windows into parallel dimensions. Historical context. The Mirror Mountain phenomenon has been documented across numerous mountain ranges throughout the world, with the earliest recorded accounts dating back to the late 18th century, when European explorers first began systematically mapping remote wilderness areas. However, indigenous peoples in affected regions have preserved oral traditions describing these mysterious reflections that extend back centuries before any Western contact. Among the Cree and Dene peoples of northern Canada, stories of mirror mountains hold central importance in spiritual traditions and cosmological beliefs. According to these ancient accounts, certain mountain faces serve as gateways between different worlds, allowing glimpses of distant lands where the spirits of ancestors dwell, or where parallel versions of reality unfold according to different natural laws. The phenomenon is often described as occurring during specific astronomical alignments or seasonal transitions. Similar traditions exist among mountain peoples throughout the world. Tibetan monasteries preserve manuscripts describing sacred peaks that occasionally display visions of distant lands and future events. Andean communities in South America have documented encounters with mountains that reflect landscapes from across vast distances, sometimes showing regions that later expeditions would discover matched real geographical features thousands of miles away. The first Western scientific documentation of the phenomenon occurred in 1798, when British explorer Samuel Mackenzie recorded witnessing a mountain in the Northwest Territories display what appeared to be a perfect reflection of European countryside, complete with cultivated fields and architectural structures unlike anything found in North America. Mackenzie's detailed sketches and written descriptions were initially dismissed by the Royal Geographic Society as hallucinations brought on by extreme cold and isolation. During the 19th century, as exploration of remote mountain regions intensified, reports of mirror mountains became increasingly common. Arctic expeditions, led by figures such as John Franklin and George Back, documented multiple encounters with reflective mountain phenomena, often describing them as among the most extraordinary sights witnessed during their journeys. These accounts were meticulously recorded in expedition journals and official reports, providing a growing body of evidence that the phenomenon represented a real and reproducible effect. The phenomenon gained broader scientific attention during the early 20th century, when advances in photography allowed researchers to capture visual evidence of the mirror mountain effects. Early photographic documentation revealed that the reflected images displayed remarkable clarity and detail, often showing landscapes with consistent internal logic and geographical features that suggested real locations rather than random optical artifacts. Discovery. The modern scientific investigation of the mirror mountain phenomenon began in earnest during the 1950s, when Dr. Margaret Chen, an atmospheric physicist from the University of Toronto, organized the first systematic study of the anomalous reflections reported in the Canadian Arctic. Dr. Chen's interest in the phenomenon was sparked by a collection of photographs taken by Royal Canadian Mounted Police officers stationed in remote northern outposts, who had documented strange reflective displays on mountain faces during their routine patrols. The initial expedition, conducted during the summer of 1954, brought a team of physicists, meteorologists, and photographers to several locations where mirror mountain sightings had been consistently reported. The team established monitoring stations equipped with cameras, spectrometers, and atmospheric measurement devices, hoping to capture and analyze the phenomenon under controlled scientific conditions. Their first breakthrough came on July 23rd, when a mountain face in the Mackenzie Mountains began displaying what appeared to be a reflection of tropical forest, complete with species of vegetation that do not exist anywhere in the Arctic regions. The team captured over 200 photographs of the display, which lasted approximately 45 minutes before gradually fading as atmospheric conditions changed. Dr. Chen's team documented several additional mirror mountain events during their 6-week expedition, each displaying different landscapes and lasting varying lengths of time. Some reflections showed familiar geographical features that could be identified as real locations thousands of miles away, while others displayed environments that appeared completely alien to any known terrestrial landscapes. The most significant discovery came when the team realized that mirror mountain events followed predictable patterns related to atmospheric conditions, solar radiation, and magnetic field variations. By monitoring these factors, they could forecast when and where reflections were likely to appear, allowing for systematic documentation and study. This predictability transformed the mirror mountain phenomenon from a mysterious curiosity into a legitimate subject for scientific investigation. Theories. The mirror mountain phenomenon has generated numerous theories as scientists and researchers attempt to explain how mountain faces can display detailed reflections of distant or impossible landscapes. The atmospheric lensing theory suggests that unique combinations of temperature gradients, humidity levels, and air pressure create natural optical lenses in the atmosphere that can bend and focus light from distant locations onto mountain surfaces. According to this explanation, the reflected images represent real landscapes that exist thousands of miles away, with the atmosphere acting as a complex optical system. However, calculations suggest that atmospheric conditions would need to be far more extreme than anything observed in nature. The electromagnetic reflection theory proposes that certain mountain faces contain mineral compositions that can interact with electromagnetic radiation in ways that create reflective displays. Some researchers suggest that specific combinations of crystalline structures and metallic deposits might create natural surfaces capable of receiving and displaying electromagnetic signals from distant locations. This theory attempts to explain how mountains could display images from locations beyond normal optical transmission range. The dimensional interface theory ventures into more speculative territory, proposing that mirror mountains represent locations where the boundaries between parallel dimensions become temporarily permeable. According to this interpretation, the reflected landscapes represent glimpses of alternate realities or parallel versions of Earth where geography and history have developed differently. The theory draws support from the fact that many reflected images show environments that appear to exist nowhere in our known world. The quantum entanglement theory suggests that certain geographical locations may be quantum mechanically entangled with distant regions, allowing instantaneous transmission of visual information across vast distances. This explanation attempts to account for the apparently real-time nature of some mirror mountain displays, where reflected images appear to show current conditions at distant locations rather than historical views. The temporal displacement theory proposes that mirror mountains represent windows into different time periods, either past or future, rather than distant geographical locations. According to this interpretation, the reflected landscapes show the same geographical areas at different points in history, explaining why some images display familiar terrain with unfamiliar features or structures. Scientific investigations. Modern scientific investigation of the mirror mountain phenomenon has employed increasingly sophisticated technologies to analyze and understand the mysterious reflective displays. High-resolution spectroscopic analysis of reflected light has revealed that mirror mountain images contain spectral signatures consistent with real sunlight reflection rather than artificial illumination, suggesting that the displays involve actual light transmission rather than energy field manifestations. Digital image analysis using computer enhancement and pattern recognition software has confirmed that reflected landscapes display consistent internal geometry and realistic perspective effects that would be extremely difficult to produce through atmospheric distortion or optical artifacts. Many images show detailed geographical features with accurate shadows, lighting effects, and depth relationships that suggest they represent views of real three-dimensional environments. Atmospheric monitoring during mirror mountain events has revealed consistent patterns of temperature inversion, humidity fluctuation, and electromagnetic field variation that precede and accompany the phenomenon. These conditions create unique optical properties in the air masses surrounding affected mountains, but computer modeling suggests that normal atmospheric effects cannot account for the extreme light bending required to produce the observed reflections. Geological analysis of mirror mountain sites has identified common mineral compositions and crystalline structures that may contribute to the reflective properties of affected rock faces. Many locations contain high concentrations of quartz, mica, and other minerals known for their optical properties, but laboratory testing has failed to reproduce mirror mountain effects using similar mineral samples under controlled conditions. Satellite surveillance and GPS tracking have been used to verify the geographical accuracy of landscapes displayed in mirror mountain reflections. In several documented cases, reflected images have shown recognizable landmarks and geographical features that match real locations thousands of miles from the observation sites. However, some reflected landscapes cannot be matched to any known terrestrial locations. Modern challenges. The ongoing study of the mirror mountain phenomenon faces numerous challenges that limit researchers' ability to fully understand and document these mysterious events. Climate change has altered atmospheric conditions in many traditional mirror mountain locations, potentially disrupting the delicate environmental factors required for the phenomenon to manifest. Rising temperatures, changing precipitation patterns, and increased extreme weather events have made it more difficult to predict when and where mirror mountain displays will occur. The remote and often dangerous locations where mirror mountains are observed present significant logistical challenges for scientific expeditions. Many sites require extensive travel through wilderness areas with harsh weather conditions and limited communication capabilities. The unpredictable timing of mirror mountain events means that research teams must often spend weeks or months in remote locations waiting for phenomena that may last only minutes or hours. Funding for mirror mountain research remains limited due to the phenomenon's classification as an anomalous or fringe scientific topic. Traditional research institutions are often reluctant to support investigations of effects that challenge established scientific understanding, making it difficult to obtain resources for comprehensive long-term studies. The increasing popularity of mirror mountain locations among tourists and amateur researchers has created new challenges for serious scientific study. Growing visitor numbers can disrupt the pristine environmental conditions that may be necessary for the phenomenon to occur, while the presence of large groups during observations can complicate efforts to document and analyze events under controlled conditions. Closing reflections. As we stand once more in imagination before those towering mirror mountains, watching impossible landscapes flicker across granite faces like windows into other worlds, we find ourselves confronting one of nature's most enigmatic mysteries. The mirror mountain phenomenon challenges our fundamental understanding of light, space, and the boundaries of reality itself, reminding us that our planet still holds secrets that defy our most sophisticated scientific explanations. The consistent reports from observers across centuries and continents, combined with photographic evidence and scientific documentation, confirm that we are dealing with a genuine physical phenomenon rather than collective delusion or technical error. Yet the mechanism behind these extraordinary reflective displays remains as mysterious today as it was when the first explorers witnessed mountain faces transform into cosmic mirrors. Perhaps the most profound aspect of the mirror mountain phenomenon is what it suggests about the nature of perception and reality. These fleeting glimpses of distant or impossible landscapes force us to question our assumptions about the limits of human observation and the boundaries between different realms of existence. Whether the reflections represent views of parallel dimensions, distant locations, or alternate timelines, they remind us that the universe may be far more complex and interconnected than our current scientific models suggest. The mirror mountains serve as humbling reminders that despite our technological advances and scientific achievements, we still live in a world full of wonder and mystery. In an age when we believe we have mapped every corner of our planet and understood the fundamental laws of physics, these magnificent reflective displays preserve a sense of magic and possibility. What do you think could explain these impossible reflections that appear on mountain faces around the world? Could they represent glimpses into parallel dimensions? Views of distant locations transmitted through unknown natural mechanisms? Or something even more extraordinary that challenges our understanding of space and time? Share your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe for more explorations into the phenomena that remind us how much mystery still surrounds us in our extraordinary world. The forbidden scripts of the wind caves. Imagine entering a cave high in the Himalayas, where the walls themselves seem to speak in a language older than human civilization. As your flashlight illuminates the smooth stone surfaces, you discover intricate symbols carved with mathematical precision across every available surface. These are not the crude markings of ancient peoples, but elegant characters that flow across the rock walls in perfect rows, their forms so sophisticated they appear to have been created by a master calligrapher. Yet no human hand carved these symbols. Instead, they were etched into the stone by wind patterns that have blown through these caves for thousands of years, creating what appears to be the world's first natural writing system. The symbols follow complex grammatical structures and display mathematical relationships that suggest meaning beyond random erosion. Identical patterns appear in caves separated by hundreds of miles across different mountain ranges, as if the wind itself were following some ancient blueprint for communication. Local Sherpa guides speak of these places in hushed reverence, calling them the libraries of the mountain spirits, where the secrets of the universe are written in stone by forces beyond human understanding. This is the mystery of the wind caves, where nature appears to have developed its own form of written language. Linguists studying these natural scripts have discovered astronomical alignments, mathematical constants, and even what appear to be predictive sequences embedded within the arrangements. The implications are staggering. Either an unknown ancient civilization possessed technology capable of directing wind erosion to create these messages, or we must accept the possibility that natural forces can spontaneously generate complex information systems that rival human language in their sophistication. Historical context. The discovery of script-like symbols in wind-carved caves represents one of the most puzzling intersections between natural geological processes and apparent intelligent design in the archaeological record. Throughout the Himalayas, Andes, and other major mountain ranges, explorers have documented caves where consistent wind patterns have created remarkably uniform erosion that resembles organized writing systems more than random weathering effects. The phenomenon was first noted in Tibetan historical texts dating back to the 8th century, when Buddhist monks described sacred caves containing what they called the writing of the wind gods. These early accounts describe symbols that appeared to convey meaning despite being created by natural forces, leading to the development of spiritual practices centered around interpreting these natural messages. Monastic traditions preserved detailed drawings of the wind-carved symbols, many of which match patterns found in caves discovered centuries later by modern explorers. Similar accounts appear in the oral traditions of mountain peoples throughout the world. Andean communities have preserved stories of caves where the mountain spirits communicate through symbols carved by the breath of the earth itself. These traditional accounts consistently describe the symbols as carrying important information about weather patterns, seasonal changes, and astronomical events, suggesting that ancient peoples recognized meaningful patterns within the natural erosion. The geological conditions required for the wind cave phenomenon are remarkably specific, requiring particular combinations of rock composition, cave orientation, and prevailing wind patterns that exist in only a few locations worldwide. The caves must be positioned to channel consistent airflow across surfaces of limestone or sandstone, soft enough to be gradually carved by persistent wind erosion, yet durable enough to preserve the resulting patterns for thousands of years. Archaeological evidence suggests that many wind cave sites were known to ancient civilizations and incorporated into religious or ceremonial practices. Stone structures and ritual objects found near cave entrances indicate that these locations held special significance for prehistoric peoples who may have recognized the unusual nature of the wind-carved patterns and attributed supernatural importance to them. Discovery. The modern scientific documentation of the wind cave phenomenon began in 1967 when British geologist Dr. James Whitfield was conducting a survey of limestone formations in the remote regions of Nepal. While mapping cave systems for potential mineral deposits, Dr. Whitfield encountered a series of chambers where the walls displayed what he initially assumed to be ancient petroglyphs or carved inscriptions created by prehistoric inhabitants. However, closer examination revealed that the symbols had not been carved by human tools, but had been formed through natural erosion processes. The markings showed the characteristic smooth, flowing lines of wind erosion rather than the sharp edges and tool marks typical of human carving. Dr. Whitfield documented over 300 distinct symbol types across multiple caves, noting that the patterns appeared to follow consistent rules of arrangement and spacing that suggested systematic organization rather than random formation. The breakthrough in understanding came when Dr. Whitfield's team mapped the airflow patterns within the caves using smoke traces and sensitive anemometers. They discovered that the symbol formations corresponded precisely to areas where specific wind velocities and turbulence patterns created optimal conditions for controlled erosion. The mathematical relationship between wind speed, duration, and symbol complexity suggested that the formations resulted from natural processes operating according to predictable physical laws. Subsequent expeditions to other mountain ranges revealed that the wind cave phenomenon was not unique to the Himalayas. Similar symbol formations were discovered in caves throughout the Andes, the European Alps, and even in smaller mountain ranges, where geological conditions created suitable environments for wind erosion. The consistency of symbol types across these geographically separated locations provided compelling evidence that the formations resulted from universal physical processes rather than cultural or human influences. The most significant discovery came when linguist Dr. Elena Rodriguez began analyzing the symbol patterns using computational linguistics techniques developed for deciphering ancient scripts. Her analysis revealed that the wind-carved symbols displayed statistical properties characteristic of natural languages, including consistent frequencies of symbol occurrence, grammatical structures, and even apparent syntax rules that govern symbol arrangement and combination. Theories. The existence of organized, language-like symbol systems created entirely by natural wind erosion has generated numerous theories attempting to explain how such complex patterns could emerge without intelligent design or human intervention. The deterministic erosion theory proposes that the wind-carved symbols result from the mathematical inevitability of certain patterns when specific physical conditions interact over extended periods. According to this explanation, the combination of consistent wind patterns, particular rock compositions, and optimal cave geometries creates natural constraints that guide erosion into recognizable forms. The theory suggests that the apparent linguistic properties of the symbols reflect underlying mathematical principles that govern both natural erosion and human language development. The information crystallization theory suggests that natural systems can spontaneously organize information into structured patterns under specific environmental conditions. This theory proposes that the wind caves represent examples of how physical processes can generate and preserve complex information without conscious design, similar to how crystals form organized structures through natural molecular arrangement. The linguistic properties of the symbols may reflect fundamental principles of information organization that operate at both natural and cognitive levels. The ancient technology theory proposes that prehistoric civilizations possessed sophisticated understanding of fluid dynamics and erosion mechanics that allowed them to engineer natural writing systems using controlled wind patterns. According to this interpretation, carefully designed cave modifications and strategically placed objects could have directed airflow to create predetermined symbol patterns over centuries or millennia. This theory attempts to explain the mathematical precision and apparent meaning within the wind-carved scripts. The emergent complexity theory suggests that the wind-carved symbols represent an example of how complex, organized patterns can emerge from simple natural processes when they operate under specific conditions over extended periods. This explanation draws on chaos theory and complexity science to propose that the apparent linguistic properties of the symbols result from the natural tendency of certain systems to self-organize into increasingly complex patterns. The dimensional interface theory proposes that the wind caves represent locations where information from higher dimensional realms becomes manifest in our three-dimensional world through natural erosion processes. According to this interpretation, the mathematical precision and apparent meaning of the symbols reflect the influence of organizing principles that operate beyond normal physical space, using wind erosion as a means of communication between different levels of reality. Scientific investigations. Modern scientific analysis of the wind cave symbols has employed increasingly sophisticated techniques to understand both the formation mechanisms and the apparent information content of these natural scripts. High-resolution three-dimensional scanning has created detailed digital models of cave walls that allow researchers to analyze symbol formation patterns and measure the precise mathematical relationships between different elements. Computational fluid dynamics modeling has simulated the airflow patterns within wind caves under various atmospheric conditions, confirming that specific combinations of wind speed, direction, and duration can create highly consistent erosion patterns. These simulations have successfully reproduced many of the basic symbol types found in natural caves, providing strong evidence that the formations result from predictable physical processes rather than random chance. Statistical analysis of symbol frequencies and arrangements using linguistic software has revealed that wind-carved scripts display many characteristics of natural languages, including consistent grammar-like rules, hierarchical organization, and even apparent semantic relationships between different symbol combinations. This analysis suggests that the symbols contain structured information that follows recognizable patterns of organization and meaning. Geological dating of the cave formations has established that many wind-carved symbols required thousands of years to develop their current forms, with some sites showing evidence of continuous symbol formation spanning over 10,000 years. This extended timeline suggests that the symbol patterns result from long-term erosion processes rather than rapid formation events that might be attributed to human intervention. Chemical analysis of the rock surfaces has identified specific mineral compositions that appear to influence symbol formation, with certain types of limestone and sandstone showing enhanced susceptibility to organized wind erosion patterns. These geological factors help explain why wind caves occur only in specific locations and why symbol formation requires such precise environmental conditions. Modern challenges. The ongoing study of wind cave symbols faces numerous challenges that threaten both the preservation of existing formations and the ability to conduct comprehensive research on this remarkable phenomenon. Climate change has altered atmospheric circulation patterns in many mountain regions, potentially disrupting the consistent wind flows that are essential for symbol formation and preservation. Rising temperatures and changing precipitation patterns have affected the humidity levels within many cave systems, altering the chemical processes that contribute to controlled erosion and potentially accelerating the degradation of existing symbols. Some research sites have shown measurable changes in symbol clarity and definition over the past several decades, suggesting that these ancient natural scripts may be disappearing faster than they can be documented. The remote and often dangerous locations of most wind caves present significant logistical challenges for research expeditions. Many sites require technical climbing skills and specialized equipment to access safely, while the high altitudes and extreme weather conditions common in mountain environments limit the duration and scope of field studies. Funding for wind cave research remains limited due to the interdisciplinary nature of the work and the unconventional classification of the phenomenon within traditional academic fields. The research requires expertise spanning geology, linguistics, fluid dynamics, and information theory, making it difficult to secure support from institutions focused on specific disciplines. Closing reflections. As we emerge from those windswept chambers where stone walls whisper secrets in languages carved by the breath of mountains themselves, we find ourselves confronting one of the most profound mysteries at the intersection of natural science and human understanding. The wind caves challenge our fundamental assumptions about the boundaries between intelligent design and natural process, forcing us to consider whether the universe itself might possess forms of information, generation, and preservation that operate far beyond our current comprehension. The mathematical precision and apparent linguistic properties of these wind-carved symbols suggest that we are witnessing either the remnants of unknown ancient technologies or the emergence of natural information systems that rival human language in their complexity and organization. Whether these formations represent the fossilized communications of prehistoric civilizations or the spontaneous development of meaning within natural processes, they remind us that our world still holds secrets that defy our most sophisticated analytical frameworks. Perhaps the most humbling aspect of the wind cave phenomenon is what it reveals about the potential for meaning and pattern to emerge from the most fundamental forces of nature. If wind and stone can collaborate across millennia to create what appears to be written communication, then we must expand our understanding of where intelligence and information can arise in the universe around us. What do you think could explain the emergence of language-like patterns from purely natural wind erosion? Could these symbols represent evidence of ancient technologies, examples of natural information systems, or something even more extraordinary about the relationship between matter and meaning? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe for more explorations into the phenomena that challenge our understanding of what is possible in our remarkable world.